We white foxes of Qingqiu are the dragon clan's chosen beast consorts. Upon coming of age, our elders impart the clan's secret arts to us. My elder sister mastered fertility magic and wed the dragon prince, awaiting only the birth of a dragon heir to secure her status. Yet on their wedding day, the prince fell in the god-demon war before their union could be consummated, leaving her a widow at the altar. But I perfected peerless cultivation arts, aiding my black serpent husband's ascension as a true dragon to claim the throne. Consumed by jealousy, my own sister stabbed me through the heart during my meditation retreat and stole my golden core. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the day the secret arts were taught. Seeing my sister confidently choose the cultivation method and willingly agree to marry the black dragon, I knew she'd been reborn too. She truly believes this lifetime will make her the Dragon King's queen. Little does she know, that so-called forbidden technique can't possibly defy fate. These are two secret arts of our Qingqiu Fox clan. One grants natural fertility, while the other embodies ancient cultivation techniques. Since Briar is the elder sister, she shall choose first. The king sat solemnly upon the throne, gazing at my sister with paternal tenderness. Those familiar words made me realize I had been reborn, returned to this very day when the secret arts were bestowed. My sister and I are the only two princesses of this generation in the Qingqiu Fox clan, and we are both betrothed to the dragon princes by decree. In my past life, father always favored my elder sister this way, letting her choose first. Without hesitation, she chose the fertility arts, convinced she'd marry the dragon prince. As the crown prince's beast consort, her paramount duty was bearing royal heirs. The fertility arts suited her perfectly. A dragon-born child would elevate her status. Yet I mastered ancient cultivation arts and was betrothed to Jax, the fourth dragon prince, a pitch-black water serpent. On their wedding day, urgent military reports arrived from the divine demon border. Prince Ronan abandoned the banquet to rush to battle, only to perish in the great celestial war, leaving my sister a young widow. Consumed by loneliness, she took a palace guard as her lover and conceived his child. When the affair was exposed, she endured lightning punishment before being cast into the cold palace to wither away. Yet I was the one who helped Jax complete his draconic ascension and claim the throne. Mad with jealousy, my sister waited until my meditation left me vulnerable, then ran me through with her sword and stole my golden core. I clenched my teeth, forcing down the surge of hatred as I looked at Briar's expectant face beside me. Father, I choose the path of cultivation. Briar strode forward while speaking, snatching the scroll from the tray and clutching it protectively against her chest, as if guarding against thieves. Briar, are you certain? The king looked puzzled. In his eyes, Briar was about to become the dragon prince's royal consort, a position of great nobility and prestige. What need did she have for such profound cultivation? Briar nodded solemnly to the king. Father, I'm certain. This cultivation technique is what I've been yearning for all along. But you're destined to be the prince's consort. Producing heirs should be your foremost duty. Briar frantically waved her hands. Father, I fell for Prince Jax at first sight. I'll never marry another. Please grant me this wish. The king frowned, growing increasingly perplexed. Briar, you're the apple of my eye. The dragon prince is the only true celestial dragon in existence, perfectly suited for you. That fourth prince is merely a low-born black serpent. Before he could finish, Briar interjected, the prince may be noble indeed, but I care not for bloodlines. Please trust me, father, the fourth prince is no ordinary creature. Who's to say he won't ascend to dragonhood one day? Though still skeptical, seeing his beloved daughter so resolute, the king finally nodded his consent. Then the king turned to me. Nina, why aren't you kneeling to thank your sister for her great kindness? She's given up the prestigious position of crown prince's beast consort for you. Now that you've acquired this fertility magic, you must bear offspring for the dragon clan without delay. I glanced sideways to see Briar's smug expression. With measured composure, I replied, Father seems mistaken. Nina merely received what elder sister deemed unworthy. My response ignited the king's fury. Pointing at my face, he berated me for my treasonous insolence. Briar demurely approached the king, gently stroking his back. Don't be angry, father. Little sister must be overwhelmed by her fortunate match. Besides, she added sweetly, as the future beast consort to the dragon crown prince, she needn't kneel before me. The king's expression softened slightly, though he kept muttering, Briar is so magnanimous. Nina, you should learn from your sister. I stood my ground, completely dismissing his words. I'd long grown accustomed to father only having eyes for my sister. She always got first pick of everything. While I settled for her leftovers, Briar whispered beside me, Congratulations, little sister, on becoming the crown prince's beast consort. Watching her smug confidence, I couldn't help but laugh. She actually believes this cultivation technique could defy fate, oblivious to the fact that Jax has been rotten to the core all along. The day soon arrived for my sister and me to depart for the dragon clan. My sister stood gracefully in her phoenix coronet and embroidered robes, while our father gazed at her with proud reluctance, holding her hand as he whispered final words of advice. Meanwhile, my red wedding dress was merely the standard ceremonial attire for fox brides. My maid Lila protested indignantly, "But you're the crown prince's beast consort. The gown personally sewn by the fox queen should rightfully be yours. Princess Briar is just a prince's consort. How dare she take precedence over you?" Before Lila could finish speaking, the eagerly awaiting Fox clanspeople erupted in cheers. The Dragon clan's wedding procession arrived, led by the fourth Prince Jax. Seeing him again in this reborn life, my body instinctively began to tremble. In my past life, to ascend as a true dragon, he mercilessly severed my fox tails and refined my child into an elixir. The agony of losing both my tails and offspring remains eternally unforgotten. Jax stepped forward, his gaze shifting between me and my sister before settling appreciatively on her flushed, alluring face. My sister sensed his stare and lowered her head in bashfulness. The lustful black serpent had coveted my sister's beauty in our past life. After our marriage, he treated me with cold indifference, until realizing my usefulness, when his honeyed words began to flow. Later, after his ascension to dragonhood, he swiftly rekindled his affair with my disgraced sister. The two conspired against me, seizing my core essence when I was at my weakest. Finally, that shameless pair got what they deserved, stuck with each other for good. The crown prince is currently occupied with military affairs and cannot attend. We humbly ask for the fox king and princess's understanding. The dragon attendant nearby bowed with clasped hands, and I returned the courtesy with a respectful nod. My sister never missed a chance to mock me. "Dear sister, perhaps the crown prince refuses to appear because he's displeased with having a beast consort like you. After all, you're just a low-born fox from Qingqiu, utterly unworthy of his royal status." I frowned and scolded her sharply. "Sister, the dragon attendants have made it clear that the crown prince is occupied with state affairs. How dare you slander him for disregarding the millennial-old alliance between dragons and Qingqiu due to mere lineage prejudice?" Hearing my words, father immediately rebuked her bluntness. "Briar, the crown prince's diligence in governance and care for his people is known throughout the realms. How could a maiden like you make such irresponsible remarks?" Seeing even her doting father speak to her with such severity, my sister's eyes instantly welled up with tears as she cast a wounded glance at Jax. Jax's heart melted at his beast consort's tearful, delicate appearance. "The Fox King exaggerates," he interceded. "This was merely sisterly banter, no need for such grave accusations." Sister gazed at Jax with moist eyes, their lingering glances thick with unspoken desire. As the auspicious hour arrived amid drumbeats and gongs, Jax swept sister off her feet into the bridal sedan. Nestling her face against Jax's chest, sister whispered something that made him gasp. "My lady, can this be true?" When her confirming glance met his, Jax burst into laughter. "Truly I've married the right woman." My sister sat primly in her palanquin, gloating as she taunted me through telepathy. "Just watch, little sister, soon enough, the crown prince's seat will have a new occupant." I couldn't help but laugh at her blind confidence that Jax was her perfect match. I wonder if she'd still feel so smug if she knew the truth about Jax's draconic transformation. I was delivered to Ronan's palace. The maidservant, seeing Ronan's prolonged absence, tried to reassure me by saying the crown prince was occupied with official duties and asked me to wait patiently. After what felt like an eternity, movement finally stirred beyond the door. Ronan had arrived, but before he could push the door open, frantic footsteps echoed from afar, their owner speaking in panicked, disjointed words. Though I couldn't make out the words, my past life instincts told me one thing: the demon army had launched their attack. Ronan never stepped inside, only speaking to me through the door. "My princess, the war between gods and demons is imminent. My fate remains uncertain in this battle. Should I perish, consider our betrothal void. You're free to choose another worthy suitor, just like in our past life. He remains willing to sacrifice everything for divine peace." Last time, the demonic forces struck with overwhelming fury while the gods, softened by millennia of peace, stood utterly defenseless. At the critical moment, Ronan self-destructed his golden core without hesitation, unleashing the pure power of a golden dragon to perish alongside the demon army. When news of his demise reached the Dragon clan, I was deeply moved by his righteous sacrifice. Had he lived, he would have been a wise and virtuous ruler. He was truly noble, even in his final moments. He ensured my safe departure, unwilling to let me suffer any delay. In our past lives, my sister could have returned to the Fox clan to remarry, but she clung to her status as the crown prince's beast consort, refusing to face ridicule from our peers in Qingqiu, stubbornly remaining in Ronan's palace for a century. The entire Dragon clan remembered Ronan's kindness and never showed her the slightest disrespect. Had she not grown restless and committed disgraceful acts that tarnished the dragon clan's honor, she could have lived out her days with dignity. Now that I've become Ronan's beast consort, I cannot simply stand by and watch him perish on the battlefield. Hearing him turn to leave, I rushed out the door and called after him, "My prince, as your beast consort Nina, how could I cling to cowardly survival while you risk your life for our divine kin? 2. Please let Nina come with you." He froze mid-step, whirling around with startled disbelief etched across his handsome features. "My princess, there's no need for you to." I tore off my ornate headdress, meeting his gaze with steel resolve. "My mind's made up, your highness. Even if forbidden, I'll follow in secret, but you're just a millennium-old snow fox. Battlefields care not for innocence. I may fail to protect you. Would you throw your life away?" The corners of my lips curled as I flashed him a radiant smile. With a swift hand seal, enormous white foxtails unfurled behind me in a burst of spiritual energy, shimmering with iridescent light. Ronan's eyes glazed over in momentary awe. "You actually possess 9 tails?" I retracted my tails and composed my expression, giving him a solemn nod. In our past life, my sister only knew that Jax had successfully transformed into a dragon through forbidden arts, thus assuming the technique passed down to me that day was the draconic metamorphosis ritual. In truth, it was merely Qingqiu's cultivation technique, a method that doubled one's progress with half the effort. I trained relentlessly day and night, and my power grew exponentially. Strangely, with each breakthrough, a new foxtail would miraculously sprout. Before long, I possessed 9 tails. After rebirth, I spared no effort in cultivation, drawing on memories from my past life. I had already achieved the 9-tailed form during my time in Qingqiu, for I knew, no matter the circumstance, my own strength was the only thing I could truly rely on. Seeing my determination, Ronan stopped trying to dissuade me, though he still seemed uneasy. I had no choice but to confess. "Your Highness, do you recall saving a little fox from a wolf demon in the mortal realm 5 centuries ago?" Ronan frowned in thought for a moment, then studied my face carefully. "Your Highness, that little fox was Nina, back when I first took human form. I recklessly left Mount Qingqiu and was captured by a wolf demon, nearly losing my life. At the critical moment, a golden dragon appeared, saving me from the wolf demon's jaws and returning me safely to Mount Qingqiu. Though unaware of his identity then, I devoted myself to cultivation with single-minded determination to repay this life-saving grace. Only when I grew older and wiser did I learn there exists but one golden dragon in this world, the Dragon Prince himself. Just when I sought to repay his kindness, I only heard news of his fall in the Great War. This time, I won't allow any regrets to remain. Unable to resist my persistence, Ronan finally brought me to the battlefield. The demonic forces came with overwhelming might, and the divine army struggled fiercely. Even with a commander like Ronan, brilliant in strategy, peerless in cultivation, and masterful in tactics, the casualties among our warriors remained devastating. In my past life, even while dwelling among the dragon clans, I heard how countless divine warriors perished from grievous wounds, leaving Ronan with barely any forces for the final battle. This was precisely why I insisted on joining them. The heart's blood of a 9-tailed fox holds power to revive the dying. With a daily offering of my lifeblood, the divine army fought for a full month with scarcely any casualties. As my essence sustained the warriors, my standing among the troops grew ever higher. Yet Ronan couldn't bear watching my face grow paler by the day. "Nina, have you lost your mind?" I smiled reassuringly. "Your Highness, our warriors protect the divine clan, and in doing so, they protect Nina too. What's a few bowls of blood compared to that? Besides, you saved my life. I'd gladly repay that debt with my very existence." Though I said this, I knew perfectly well, as a 9-tailed fox, I wasn't about to kick the bucket so easily. Ronan frowned, his face etched with concern. The ever-composed noble actually pulled me into his arms. "You foolish little fox." Seeing their prolonged assault falter, the demon clan grew desperate. On the day of reckoning, they conjured an illusionary barrier to ambush the divine race. The soldier's report reached me as I was extracting lifeblood from my core to heal the wounded. "Lady Nina, disaster strikes. The vile demons have deployed trickery. Their underhanded schemes know no bounds." My heart clenched. In my past life, Ronan had perished on this very day. I believed my intervention could alter his fate, only to unwittingly provoke the demon's retaliation. With a thought, I transformed into a wisp of smoke and followed Ronan's scent, soon finding him in a secluded valley. Ronan visibly startled upon seeing me. "Nina, what are you doing here? This illusion barrier is deadly. No matter how powerful the trapped may be, they'll perish without finding the exit. Your Highness, have you forgotten?" We fox spirits of Qingqiu are masters at unraveling illusions. No mystical barrier in this world can best Nina. I grasped Ronan's hand, holding my breath as I carefully navigated through the thick mist, guiding him forward. The soldiers erupted in cheers, shouting my name in exhilaration as the path suddenly cleared before them. The demon forces were already spent. Without their veil of deception, Ronan crushed them utterly, leaving them powerless to threaten us for centuries. With the battle nearly over, the weight in my chest finally lifted. In this lifetime, Ronan emerged completely unscathed. Having faced life and death with Ronan, I saw undisguised admiration in his gaze, and I realized he meant more to me than just being my savior. On our triumphant return, I specifically asked Ronan not to mention my deeds, for I wished to keep my nine-tailed fox identity secret. When Ronan returned to the Dragon Clan, townsfolk spontaneously lined the roads outside the city to welcome him. Though I tried to conceal my participation in the war alongside Ronan, the soldiers spread tales of my deeds until everyone knew. Yet all they say is that the crown prince returned with a mysterious woman who performed great feats in the divine war. He relies on her heavily. They're inseparable. Perhaps a wedding approaches, but none know her true identity. Dressed early in the royal beast consort's attire, I blended into the Dragonkin welcoming party, watching from afar as Ronan basked in the crowd's adoration. My sister Briar and Jack stood among the Dragonkin greeters. After our long separation, she looked gaunt and troubled. I knew she must be wondering how Ronan returned unscathed. Jax's face grew even longer, already unpleasant to look at, now downright repulsive. He scowled at Briar. "Didn't you swear Ronan would perish in battle? Now he returns victorious, making my ascension to the throne impossible." "I knew it. Your tales of rebirth were lies, and this dragon transformation nonsense mere fantasy." Briar's lips trembled, tears welling as she whispered, "My lord, Briar knows not what went awry, but every word I spoke was true." Jax didn't believe a word she said, turning his head away in a huff. Briar's eyes welled up with tears. Sensing my gaze, she swayed her hips and sauntered toward me. "How can you still smile, sister? They say the crown prince has brought back an extraordinary woman, treating her with such devotion. The Ronan palace may soon welcome a new mistress." I watched her gloating expression with icy detachment. Her eagerness to see me humiliated was downright pathetic. I leaned in and whispered, "Aren't you curious, sister, how the crown prince returned unscathed? In our past life, he perished together with the demon race." Briar's eyes widened instantly, her breath catching. "Nina, you've been reborn too." She glared at me with fox-like eyes, teeth clenched. "It must be your meddling that cost me the fourth prince's trust. Don't celebrate too soon. Once I successfully helped my husband ascend as the dragon's sovereign, that supreme throne may yet find a different occupant." I smiled without a word. The Dragon Clan threw a grand victory banquet for the triumphant army, seated beside Ronan. He thoughtfully served me dish after dish until my plate overflowed with all my favorite meats: chicken, duck, fish, and pork. Briar kept stealing glances in our direction, her envious gaze lingering on Ronan's face. Ronan was famously handsome. In her past life, my sister became a widow without even touching the hem of his robe. Now married to the plain-looking Jax, she must be seething with jealousy. Just then, a Beast King consort seated nearby couldn't help but remark. Marveling at the affection between Ronan and me, Briar's face turned ashen. Having always overshadowed me since childhood, she couldn't bear to see me enjoy even the slightest advantage. "What does affection matter?" she sneered. "The entire Dragonkin court knows His Highness brought back a mysterious woman from the battlefield. Your favor, dear sister, will likely be as fleeting as morning dew." Ronan frowned at her words. "Ready to defend me?" I patted his hand and raised my goblet toward Briar instead. "How right you are, sister. In matters of devotion, I could never compare to you and the fourth prince. Rumor has it you've mastered esoteric arts to aid his ascension. Such dedication puts my humble affections to shame." The beast consort who'd been eyeing me with envy couldn't resist a jab. "How devoted the fourth prince's consort is. Though I've heard His Highness frequents pleasure quarters often, perhaps because his devoted lady buries herself in cultivation, leaving him lonely through the long nights. What's more, the fourth prince keeps boasting he'll soon ascend as a dragon. Yet how long has it been? No ascension in sight, not even the slightest improvement in cultivation." Raucous laughter erupted around them. Briar flushed with humiliation and rolled up her sleeves to confront the consort, but Jax intervened, pulling her away by the arm. "Enough. If you're not embarrassed, I certainly am." I added fuel to the fire, whispering to Briar, "Sister, perhaps you're unaware, that remarkable woman who caught the crown prince's fancy, that would be me." Briar turned back reluctantly, only to be yanked away roughly by Jax. That night, Ronan pinned me against the corner cabinet, breathing heavily as he demanded, "Darling, in what way are we less devoted than other couples?" My mind went blank. What could he possibly mean by that? Before I could respond, he swallowed my words with a kiss, and we finally consummated our long overdue wedding night. Waking the next morning, I rubbed my sore lower back and marveled. Truly, the world's last living dragon was in a league of his own. Life in Ronan's palace was idyllic thereafter. By day I'd till the soil and tend my garden while Ronan attended to state affairs. I often shared the fruits of my labor with the impoverished dragon folk. Come nightfall, Ronan would tirelessly initiate our dual cultivation. After our first encounter, he became insatiable, claiming me every evening with relentless ardor. 2 moons later, I gazed at my slightly rounded belly, lost in contemplation. In my past life with Jax, conception had taken years of trying. In this life, I was born with a natural gift for fertility. Never imagined I'd conceive so quickly. Ronan caressed my growing belly, grinning like an overjoyed boy, shedding all the solemnity befitting a clan heir. Rare elixirs and precious tonics flooded my chambers daily. Nina, he beamed. I'm going to be a father, deep down. I couldn't help wondering, might this child bear some resemblance to my poor, lost little one? Perhaps this is my child's reincarnation coming back to me. The entire dragon clan has their eyes on my pregnancy, with some even placing bets on whether I'll give birth to another golden dragon like Ronan. Even Briar couldn't stay away. She found an excuse to offer congratulations and visited me in Ronan's palace for the first time. She looked even less fox-like than our last meeting, her complexion sallow, eyes weary and clouded, devoid of her usual radiant charm. Though I've been keeping to myself lately, news about her and Jax keeps reaching me. Briar struggled to master the dragon transformation technique. Jax, already displeased with her, grew even more impatient after my quick pregnancy, pressuring her relentlessly in her training. Briar never had much talent for cultivation, and years of neglect left her progress sluggish. Under Jax's pressure, she nearly suffered chi deviation, ending up severely drained with a ghastly pallor from the spiritual backlash. Jax had long lost the tenderness of their newlywed days, now carousing with dubious beastkin companions and regularly berating her in drunken rages. She must have come this time to pry the dragon ascension method from me. Sure enough, Briar spoke to me with rare humility. Little sister, I was wrong before. I'd been possessed by demons to repeatedly harm you. I deeply regret my actions. This wretched life I now lead is nothing less than divine retribution. Might my sister enlighten me? How exactly does this secret art enable one to ascend as a dragon? I chuckled inwardly. After how Jax treated Briar, she still wanted to help him. Honestly, I didn't know whether to call it admirable or foolish, but since she wouldn't give up until hitting a wall, why should I stand in her way? Sister, have you heard how our white foxtails are among the rarest treasures in this world? In my past life, I severed my own foxtail to grant Jax's celestial ascension. Briar froze. Cut off my tail. Forget about the excruciating pain that'd nearly kill me. Without my tail, how could I ever win Jax's heart back? I shook my head with feigned wisdom. Sister, ordinary foxes would indeed lose half their lives severing their tails, but you've mastered the arcane arts. The pain shall be far more bearable. Besides, when the fourth prince learns you sacrificed your vulpine tail for him, he'll be utterly moved. Securing his affection will be child's play. Briar snapped out of her daze. Right, why didn't I think of that? Before I could finish speaking, she slapped her thigh and stormed off. In my past life, I severed 7 tails and combined them with my son's core to help Jax ascend as a dragon. Unless my eyes deceived me, Briar still only has 1 tail. I wasn't worried she'd doubt my words. She could always verify their truth by consulting the clan's most venerable elders. True enough, 3 nights later, a blinding white light erupted in Jax's palace accompanied by a thunderous roar, jolting the entire court awake. Rubbing my bleary eyes, I tried to get up and investigate, but Ronan yanked me back into bed. Nina, he chided, you're about to become a mother, yet you still can't resist poking your nose into everything. Clinging to his arm, I pleaded until he relented. With an exasperated sigh, Ronan rolled out of bed, grabbed a cloak, and bundled me up snugly before we set off. By the time we arrived, the place was already swarmed with people drawn by the commotion. Briar lay collapsed in her true form, barely conscious amidst a pool of crimson, as the imperial dragon physicians channeled spiritual energy into her. A sharp-eyed observer noticed her condition. Why is the fourth prince's beast consort missing her foxtail? Regaining consciousness, Briar struggled to announce to the crowd, the fourth prince has ascended as a true dragon. The crowd exchanged disbelieving whispers, convinced Briar had lost her senses and was spouting nonsense. Seeing their skepticism, Briar assumed her regal Qingqiu princess demeanor. I, a noble white fox of Qingqiu, have channeled my tail's power to help the fourth prince ascend as a dragon. Why aren't you kneeling before your true sovereign? As doubt and wonder hung in the air, thick black smoke suddenly billowed from the chamber. A shadowy figure burst through the doorway, sending gasps through the assembly. Yet Briar struggled to her knees and proclaimed, "Hail the fourth prince's celestial ascension." But in the next instant, someone recognized it. That pitch-black figure wasn't a dragon at all, but a mere serpent. Jax had become a snake, 2 ranks lower than even a flood dragon. Briar was thrown to the ground as Jax revealed his serpent form. Gaping maw like a bottomless abyss, roaring, "You treacherous fox, how dare you plot against your king? I am the true dragon, how dare you reduce me to this monstrous state? I'll have your head for this." Coiling his serpent tail around Briar, he slammed the already weakened man repeatedly against the ground. Blood gushed from Briar's mouth, yet he stubbornly gasped, "Impossible, my foxtail is a rare treasure. It was destined to help your highness ascend as a dragon. Where did it all go wrong?" Seeing the situation spiraling out of control, Ronan restrained the frenzied Jax and dispersed the gathering crowd. I approached Briar when she suddenly grabbed me. "It was you, wasn't it? You're the one who deceived me. No one deceived you. You simply left in a hurry before I could finish speaking that day. A single foxtail is far from enough to ascend as a dragon. You need 9 tails. Moreover, you must supplement it with the inner core of a blood relative to succeed." This time Briar refused to believe it. 9 tails? Impossible. How could you possibly possess 9 tails? Without dedicated cultivation, you wouldn't know. That forbidden tome contains the very method to attain the 9 tails. This time she seemed half convinced, murmuring, "No wonder, in your past life, your newborn child met such a mysterious end, so that's why." Her eyes darkened. Jax, how could he sacrifice even his own flesh and blood? What a heartless monster. Then her eyes fluttered shut as she collapsed into unconsciousness. By the next day, word of Jax's failed ascension and subsequent transformation into a serpent had spread like wildfire through the dragon clans. Those who'd always disliked him seized the chance to kick him while he was down. "What was wrong with being a flood dragon? Had to reach above your station, didn't you? Now look at you, not even a dragon anymore, just a lowly snake." Exactly. Rumor has it his beast consort even severed her own foxtail to aid his ascension. Such devotion, and how does he repay her? Frolicking with those seductive demon creatures day after day. Honestly, that 4th prince's beast consort is a hopeless romantic. Completely beyond saving, Jax became the laughingstock of the court. Utterly humiliated, he's been holed up in the palace ever since, refusing to show his face. Briar nearly lost her life and was sent outside the city to recuperate. After all this, she surely won't harbor any illusions about Jax anymore. Before long, the day of my confinement arrived. Dragons are massive creatures while foxes are petite, which made my previous childbirth an excruciating ordeal. I endured 3 agonizing days to deliver our serpent child, yet Jax callously berated me in my weakened state. Furious I hadn't birthed him a true dragon heir. The irony, that mere water serpent couldn't sire a dragon if his life depended on it. When familiar labor pains struck again, my cries brought Ronan rushing to my bedside, defying all objections as he knelt and clasped my trembling hand. As my strength waned, I felt an endless surge of spiritual energy flowing through me, the aura of the true dragon. "Nina, you mustn't come to harm, for we're never doing this again." "Ronan, he's truly wonderful, perhaps infused with his vital energy." The pain seemed to dull, so I gathered my strength for one final push. In an instant, the sky erupted in prismatic hues as violet radiance pierced through. The dragonkin gathered outside my birthing chamber, their murmurs reaching me, such celestial signs. "The Crown Prince's beast consort must be delivering a golden dragon," Briar's faint voice whispered in my ear. Golden dragon, at best, a mere serpent. She wasn't wrong. In my past life, I did indeed give birth to a flood dragon. Amidst the chatter, the midwife cried out at the top of her lungs, "The Crown Princess has delivered. It's a golden dragon." The dragon emperor roared with laughter. "Splendid. After 10,000 years, a golden dragon is finally born." He waited outside for the midwife to bring out his draconic heir, when suddenly the royal physician rushed out cradling a swaddled bundle and dropped to his knees. "Rejoice, dragonkin, the crown princess has birthed no ordinary golden dragon, it's a 9-tailed golden dragon." "What? 9 tails, a golden dragon? This is the legendary form of an ancient dragon deity." The dragon emperor froze for a moment before prostrating himself, kowtowing to the dragon infant in swaddling clothes. The entire assembly dropped to their knees. "All hail the dragon god." Briar turned deathly pale, muttering in disbelief, "How? She's just a bastard white fox with impure bloodline. How could she possibly give birth to the dragon god? This must be some mistake." She kept rambling to herself as she stumbled away in hysterics. The entire crowd was swept up in overwhelming joy, for the dragon god's descent heralded at least 10,000 years of peace for their kind. The dragon emperor immediately drafted an edict, passing the throne to Ronan. In the birthing chamber, I wept tears of joy. My dragon whelp looked exactly as he had in his previous life, his pitch-black eyes fixed on me as he flashed an innocent smile. I knew it. He's come back to me. After his journey beyond the skies, he's returned for me. I held him tight in my arms, feeling safe. He nuzzled against me and drifted into sweet slumber. Ronan wrapped his arms around me and our dragonling, Nina. "You've suffered enough. let's never go through this again. All right, I'm afraid this isn't up to me. With my highly fertile constitution, if I don't bear children, I'd have to remain celibate indefinitely. On the Dragon Whelp's 1-month celebration, Ronan held a grand ceremony for him. Holding the little one in my arms, I received blessings under the gaze of the gathered crowd. Jack suddenly lunged from nowhere, brandishing a razor-sharp longsword pointed straight at my chest. That blade was all too familiar. In our past life, he'd severed my foxtails and stolen my child's core with it, but I was no longer the same fox from that lifetime. With a cold glare, my 9 massive tails coiled around Jax like steel cables before hurling him across the clearing. After his transformation into a serpent, Jax might as well have been made of paper. The crowd gasped. A 9-tailed fox. No wonder she could give birth to a golden 9-tailed dragon. Mesmerized by my dazzling foxtails, they couldn't look away. Jax contorted his serpentine body, his voice hoarse. So you're a 9-tailed fox. If I sever your tails, I'll surely ascend as a dragon. Like a madman, he charged at me again, completely disregarding the vast difference in our strength. With just a flick of my tail, he went flying across the room, crashed into a stone pillar, twitched twice, and fell still. After ascending the throne, Ronan devoted himself to governance and brought unprecedented order to the dragon clans. The young dragon heir showed remarkable intelligence. The moment he came of age, Ronan abdicated in his favor and took me traveling through the human realm. We next encountered Briar in a black market of the human world, filthy and battered. She was caged like livestock for buyers to inspect. Yet everyone shunned her as an ugly fox with a broken tail, leaving her utterly neglected. After leaving the dragon clan, she returned to Qingqiu, begging her father the king for protection. The king, moved by pity, defied the elders' objections and kept her in Qingqiu with silks and delicacies, treating her no differently than in her maiden days. But then, through some unknown source, she learned a way to regrow her severed tail, and set her sights on the king himself. Seizing the moment when her father was off guard, she severed his fox tail with a single slash. Though the aged king was a white fox of considerable cultivation, the heart-wrenching betrayal from his beloved daughter proved too much to bear. He perished shortly after losing his tail. The elders of Qingqiu ordered Briar's capture, but the dying king intervened. Unable to watch their lord pass with regrets, they ultimately granted Briar mercy, yet Briar's spiritual energy clashed with her father's. The grafted tail began rotting within days, and all her hard-earned cultivation dissipated into nothingness. The shock of losing what she'd just regained drove her to madness. Somehow, she fell into the hands of human hunters, caged like an animal for others to pick and choose. Briar, how could you have fallen this low? As if hearing her own name after an eternity, the syllables sounded foreign to her. When she lifted her gaze to me at last, I saw the familiar hatred flashing in her eyes. You, Nina, this is all your fault. I'll kill you. Why do I still lose to you even when given another chance? Her paws frantically rattled the cage as she howled, only to be met with the vendor's brutal beating. 5. You brought this upon yourself. In your past life, you chose Ronan yet never truly stood by him, letting him fight battles alone while you lived comfortably among the dragons, clinging to your status as the crown prince's beast consort, yet still couldn't resist sneaking around with others. Then you even conspired with Jax to murder me. This time it was your own choice to pick Jax. Why blame me again? Briar sobbed. If you hadn't schemed against me, why would I have foolishly severed my own tail? Whose fault is this anyway? The arcane arts were yours to master, yet you wasted your time currying Jax's favor instead of honing your skills. How is your own incompetence suddenly my responsibility? And what if I did it on purpose? You took my life in our past incarnation. Consider yourself lucky I only claimed one tail this time. After all the love Father has shown you, how could you raise your hand against him? You're beyond redemption. With that, I took Ronan's hand and walked away without looking back. Briar pleaded desperately from the cage. Don't leave. Please help me. I turned a deaf ear. A heartless fox like her deserved exactly this fate. Noticing my low spirits, Ronan gently suggested, my love, let's go see the Lantern Festival. I've always heard mortal lantern fairs are far more enchanting than our dragon kinds. With a smile, I melted into his embrace as we strolled toward the sea of twinkling lights. The end. Story 2. In my previous life, my sister sacrificed our entire family for the sake of her one true love. After being reborn, she still showed no remorse and tried to seize my space first. However, she didn't expect that this time, all of us had been reborn. 1. Mom, where's the bracelet Grandma left behind? The one Grandma left before she passed away. My sister, who usually lounged in bed playing on her phone, suddenly burst out of her room like a madwoman. Ignoring her disheveled appearance, she shouted urgently, "What?" Mom responded, confused. My sister rushed into my bedroom, then came out frowning and said impatiently, "The silver bracelet Grandma wore before she died." She was so immersed in the joy of being reborn that she didn't notice the subtle change in Mom's expression at all. At this moment, Dad and I had just arrived home. As soon as she saw me, my sister's face lit up. She quickly grabbed my hand, and when she saw it was empty, her expression darkened instantly. "Giselle, where's your bracelet? Give it to me now." Mom and I exchanged a glance and immediately understood that she had also come back. I just didn't expect that even though she had personally killed me, Mom, and Dad in the previous life, she could still talk to us without batting an eyelid, but I didn't show it. I just replied indifferently, "What bracelet? When did I ever wear a bracelet?" In the previous life, we accidentally found that bracelet when we went to clean our old hometown a few days before the apocalypse. My sister thought it was unlucky because Grandma had worn it during her lifetime, and she casually threw it to me, who knew it was actually a treasure with its own space. It could store a large amount of food, and there was also sweet spring water and fertile farmland inside. It was precisely because of this bracelet that our family could survive in that old house during the extremely hot weather. Only then did my sister slap her forehead and ask urgently, "What date is it now?" When she learned that it was a month before the apocalypse, her excitement became almost palpable. "Great, great, this time, Everett won't have to suffer so much." As soon as she finished speaking, Mom and Dad's expressions changed abruptly. Everett, the name my sister mentioned, was the love of her life. In the previous life, in order to save him, my sister brutally killed me. She lied that I had a conflict with people looking for water outside, and she survived only because Everett saved her. Mom and Dad were heartbroken. But in the apocalypse, it was already difficult to stay alive, so they couldn't focus on anything else and could only allow Everett to enter our home. However, my sister and the others soon discovered that the bracelet recognized its master, and only I could enter that space. As food became scarcer and scarcer, under Everett's impatient gaze, my sister finally locked Mom and Dad outside, letting them die of dehydration in the extremely hot weather. Perhaps even heaven couldn't stand it. When we opened our eyes, we had all been reborn, and a whole month earlier than my sister. This time, we must prevent the tragedy of the previous life from repeating itself. As for my sister, this ungrateful wretch, since that's the case, let her fend for herself in the apocalypse, too. When my sister saw that all our eyes were on her, she immediately shut up and composed herself, afraid that we would notice something amiss. Ignoring her pajamas, she tried to cover up her eagerness and shouted, "I'm going out." Then she turned and disappeared from sight, obviously going to find her beloved Everett. Mom, Dad, and I sat silently at the table. Finally, Dad broke the silence. "Hui Jen, we always said that Genevieve lacked a sense of security because she was born prematurely, but in the previous life, she didn't hesitate to kill us." Mom's voice was choked with sobs. "I used to think that since I raised her, she was my daughter, and it didn't matter if she was my biological child or not." However, the experiences of the previous life told her that it wasn't the case at all. My sister was adopted by Mom and Dad from an orphanage, unexpectedly. 2 years after the adoption, Mom got pregnant with me. At that time, my sister showed her disgust and even persuaded Mom to abort me more than once. Mom originally thought it was just a sign of her lack of security, besides giving her more care. She didn't pay too much attention, but it ultimately led to that tragic ending, this time around. We were busy storing food in the space and looking for a place to stay during the apocalypse, but we didn't mention my sister at all. Now that she was back, it seemed that we had already decided how to deal with her, let her fend for herself. Mom wiped away her tears and gently stroked my hand. "I don't ask for anything else. As long as our family of 3 can live well, that's more than enough. We will," I comforted her softly. 3. In the evening, my sister finally came back. Apparently, she had successfully persuaded Everett, and a relaxed expression naturally showed on her face. "Mom, how much money is left at home?" Mom didn't respond, but Dad asked, "What do you need the money for?" My sister was already 28 years old. Over the years, she had guarded against me like a thief. She neither went out to work nor contributed to the family, just living off Mom and Dad. So basically, all her expenses came from asking Mom and Dad for money. "Just tell me, I want to know." My sister plopped down next to Dad, squeezing me aside, and said, "Give me 1,000,000 yuan, and I'll go out to work. What do you think?" She looked as if Mom and Dad were her personal ATMs. Our family was just an ordinary middle-class family. To come up with 1,000,000 yuan, we would probably have to sell our house. After saying that, my sister seemed to realize this, but she still held Dad's hand and coquettishly said, "Dear Dad, if you really can't, you can take out a loan. It's okay. It's just 1,000,000 yuan, just 1,000,000 yuan." Dad's face had turned extremely terrible looking. My sister knew that the family was about to face difficulties, but instead of reminding us, she was so heartless. Finally, Dad couldn't take it anymore and slapped her across the face. Before my sister could react, she fell to the ground. "Genevieve, I've been too lenient with you all these years. I've spoiled you rotten. Do you even care about this family anymore? My sister had never been beaten since she was a child. Her eyes immediately turned red. Maybe she knew she was wrong, but for the sake of her beloved, she still stubbornly shouted, "You have money, why won't you give it to me? I'm also your daughter. Are you going to leave all the money to Giselle?" Why? Dad was so angry that he trembled all over and asked the most helpless question from the bottom of his heart. "Genevieve, what does our family owe you? Your mom and I raised you and your sister together. We've never shown favoritism. Do you have any conscience?" Tears streamed down Genevieve's face. "You're lying. You've always favored her. It's been like this since we were kids, even if you don't say it." "I know." Mom, who had been silent, finally trembled and pointed outside. "Get out, Mom." Genevieve looked at Mom in disbelief. Mom, who had always doted on her the most, would always be the first to comfort her whenever she was unhappy. But now she was telling her to get out. Genevieve couldn't believe it and immediately turned her anger on me. "Is it you, Giselle? What lies did you tell Mom and Dad? You're so despicable. Mom and Dad aren't just yours." I looked at her with a dark expression. Mom and Dad had never shown favoritism. It was she who was obsessed with it and wrongly attributed it to them. I could overlook what happened in the previous life for Mom and Dad's sake, but now, why should I care what an ungrateful person thought? "You're right." Under her shocked gaze, I dragged her to the door and threw her out. I said coldly, "You're not Mom and Dad's daughter at all. You should have grown up in an orphanage and died alone. Mom and Dad shouldn't have given you extra love." With a bang, I closed the door tightly, almost in her face, under her stunned gaze. Soon, the sound of her kicking and cursing came from outside the door. But none of us paid any attention. Knowing something in our hearts was one thing, but emotional ties were another. Soon, only Mom's soft sobs could be heard in the living room. Dad also turned his head with red-rimmed eyes. For a while, we were all silent, silently accepting everything. Fortunately, the gloomy atmosphere didn't last long, and we quickly perked up. We had already found a place to stay during the apocalypse these past few days. Dad and I had been leaving early and coming back late to check on the renovation progress. It was a relatively secluded villa area with a good terrain. It also had a cellar like our old hometown, so it wouldn't be difficult to get through the extremely hot weather, especially with my space. Yes, as soon as I came back, I went to the old house in the suburbs and took the bracelet, leaving only an ordinary substitute, just like in the previous life. Only I could open the bracelet that had recognized its master. I was originally worried about how to explain the apocalypse to Mom and Dad, but unexpectedly, they had also been reborn, so we decided to prepare supplies for the apocalypse when my sister wasn't paying attention. We didn't dare to buy things openly. Instead, we rented a warehouse in the name of me opening a supermarket. We went to various shops every day, under the pretext of testing new products. We only bought a small amount from each place to avoid attracting attention. At night, we secretly put everything into the space. Things put into the space would remain in their original state, and we hardly had to worry about them expiring or getting moldy. During this time, Mom also bought a lot of seeds. When we went to the warehouse at night, she would help plant some. In her words, although it might not be of much use, it was still something to look forward to, after solving the food problem. The next thing was accommodation. In the previous life, we encountered extremely hot weather when cleaning the old house. Fortunately, the cellar of the old house was a good place to take shelter, so the first thing that came to our mind was a house with a cellar. It was too late to renovate the old house, and besides, my sister already knew about it, so it wasn't safe to go there, for a while. We couldn't think of any other choice except a villa with a wine cellar. Mom and Dad gritted their teeth, sold the house, took out a loan, and with my careful selection, we finally settled on this place. After getting the house, we didn't slack off. We reinforced the doors, raised the protective nets, and strengthened the windows. In other words, we improved all the exposed parts. For electricity, we chose solar energy first. We didn't have to worry about running out of power in the early stage, and there were generators in the later stage. Overall, it was sufficient, not only humans, but we wouldn't be afraid even if zombies came. Just as Mom, Dad, and I were about to start moving, my sister came back again. 5. Genevieve's arrogant nature finally bowed down in the face of money. Indeed, her beloved Everett pretended to be noble, but in reality, he was penniless. Genevieve needed to buy supplies, so she had no choice but to ask her parents for help. This time, Mom and Dad didn't soften their hearts. When they saw them arrive, they didn't even give them a glance. Genevieve had never been treated like this before, but under Everett's impatient gaze, she held back her anger and humbly said, "Mom, Dad, I was really wrong last time. Don't be angry anymore." However, Mom and Dad had lost all hope in her. They were unmoved no matter what she said. Genevieve seemed to have expected this situation. As soon as she finished speaking, she dropped a bombshell. Mom, Dad, I'm going to marry Everett. What? Mom looked at the two of them with a hint of scrutiny. Are you serious? Seeing an opportunity, Genevieve quickly replied, yes, actually, Everett and I have been together for a long time. After what happened last time, I've decided that we'll move out after we get married. As she spoke, she pretended to wipe away tears, obviously trying to gain Mom and Dad's sympathy by taking a step back. Everett didn't say a word throughout, but from his expression, it was clear that he wasn't happy about it. After all, in his eyes, Genevieve was just someone who fawned over him. If she hadn't spent money on him, he wouldn't have given her the time of day. If what Genevieve said was true and he didn't have to spend any money, he wouldn't have participated in this farce. Dad knew her intentions well and sneered, "Get married if you want. We won't stop you even if you move your household registration out now." A glimmer of light flashed in Genevieve's eyes, but Everett's face darkened instantly. I smiled lightly. "Sister, you seem very happy, but brother-in-law doesn't look too pleased." Genevieve glared at me, seeing that Everett's expression was unpleasant. She quickly changed the subject. "Dad, Everett and I plan to have a wedding first and then get married," Mom said coldly. "What? Here to ask for money again?" Genevieve had been away from home for a long time. We hadn't contacted her, and she didn't receive a warm welcome when she came back. Her patience had run out, and she said impatiently, "Mom, why do you always talk like that? I'm getting married. Don't you have anything to say? Are you just going to let me lose face? Besides, am I not your daughter? I'm getting married. Aren't you going to give me any dowry?" In the end, she was still after the money. Mom looked at her disappointedly. "Then tell us. What do you want us to do?" Genevieve said confidently. "Of course. You have to throw me a grand wedding. Forget about the $1,000,000 yuan, but you should at least give me 500,000 yuan as a dowry." Dad finally couldn't take it anymore. "Who exactly are you going to marry?" He pointed at Everett. "If you want to marry him, ask him for these things. We don't have anything." Genevieve panicked. "Everett has just started working. Where would he get so much money?" "Then where do we get so much money?" "Genevieve, have you lost all your conscience?" Genevieve wasn't willing to back down. "Why don't you have it? Don't think I don't know. You just want to secretly leave the money to Giselle." Hearing these words again, Dad pinched his forehead wearily. "Just leave, marry whoever you want. After raising you for so many years, it seems we just weren't meant to be a family." "Dad, enough." Everett, who had been listening silently, finally exploded. He realized that he wouldn't get any money this time, and his pride was hurt. He said coldly to Genevieve, "Since your parents look down on me, that's it, I'm leaving." With that, he walked out without looking back, and the door slammed shut behind him. Seeing her beloved really leave, Genevieve could no longer control her emotions and completely broke down. She shouted, "Mom and Dad, what on earth do you want? Is this how you treat me? Are you just going to watch and ruin my happiness? I'm still your daughter after all." Mom looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. "We treat you as our daughter, but have you ever treated us as your parents?" Genevieve's eyes dodged slightly, but she still justified loudly, "Of course I have. You hid the fact that you had Giselle from me first. Isn't it reasonable for me to be angry? And Giselle is your biological daughter. Don't think I don't know you'll leave all the good things to her in the future." The more she spoke, the more she thought she was in the right. "Look, I'm about to get married, but you won't even give me a decent wedding. What else is this if not favoritism?" Seeing Mom's chest heaving violently, I said, "Well, we really can't afford that much money, but we can give you the old house in the suburbs." Genevieve's voice stopped abruptly, and she stared straight at me. Really, in the past, she definitely wouldn't have agreed, but the bracelet was hidden in the old house, and although the place was remote, the house was still worth a lot of money, which was better than getting nothing. She had tried to get the bracelet from the old house before, but the place was in a mess and uninhabited. Mom and Dad had also taken great care to prevent her from entering. She was afraid that the risks of forcing her way in would outweigh the benefits, so she hadn't succeeded yet. As soon as I said this, she was immediately tempted. Sometimes I really don't know whether to call Genevieve smart or stupid. After being reborn, she knew to hide her identity immediately and plan for money and supplies, but she never thought of hiding the bracelet in another place. "Then give me the key to the old house now and take me to transfer the ownership tomorrow. We can give you the key first, but the condition is that you must move your household registration out," I said calmly. "What?" Genevieve immediately stood up and pointed at me, shouting angrily, "I knew it was you behind all this. Do you want me to cut off all ties with this family completely?" "Mom and Dad, look, I told you Giselle has bad intentions." She was still yelling hysterically until Dad suddenly slammed his hand on the table. Then she realized that the reaction she expected didn't happen. Everyone's eyes were fixed on her, filled with complex emotions she couldn't understand. "Do as Giselle said." Dad made the final decision. Genevieve finally felt scared. She once thought that we had all been reborn, But she quickly comforted herself that if that were true, we couldn't be so calm. Perhaps the approaching apocalypse made her anxious, she said viciously. Fine, I'll move it, you'll regret it sooner or later. Dad obviously didn't want to see her anymore, with time running out. He managed to move Genevieve's household registration out before the end of the workday. Genevieve got the key as she wished and left without looking back to find Everett. The apocalypse was approaching, and whether the house was transferred or not didn't matter to her anymore. While she was busy selling supplies, the renovation of the villa was completed. Mom, Dad, and I didn't hesitate to prepare to move there. 6. When I say we moved, we didn't actually take many things. Just some daily necessities and items with sentimental value. We didn't plan to leave openly. Most of the things in the house were left as they were to prevent Genevieve from getting suspicious if she suddenly came back. I also spread the news about the day Genevieve came back with Everett and made a scene throughout the neighborhood. Soon, everyone knew that Genevieve insisted on marrying a poor guy and even asked for a dowry of 1 million yuan every time I appeared in the neighborhood. I would be stopped by gossipy aunts who would ask, "So did your parents give the money to your sister in the end?" I would sigh and say, "Alas, where would we get so much money? They wouldn't let it go. But I heard your sister still left with that guy." I would sigh again. "Yes, my parents didn't have that much money at once, so they had to give her the house in the suburbs first. Let's not talk about it, Auntie. After all, it's the old family house." My parents haven't been in a good mood these days, and I plan to take them out to relax. I have to go now. This way, if Genevieve suddenly came looking for us and couldn't find anyone, there was nothing to worry about. Mom, Dad, and I left the neighborhood justifiably and moved into the villa. Looking at the magnificent villa, our moods immediately improved. No wonder everyone wants to be rich. On the first day of moving in, Mom, Dad, and I cooked hot pot, eating the steaming hot pot. We felt much less tired from the past few days. With food and a safe place to live, I believe we won't have a hard time surviving the apocalypse this time. After dinner, Mom was still in a gloomy mood. She touched the sofa and felt uneasy. "Giselle, this is the first time Mom has lived in such a nice house, but I just feel something is off. We were reborn and could prepare in advance. But what about those who didn't? I'm not a saint. I also learned my lesson from Genevieve in the previous life." But she still couldn't get over it. I comforted her. "It's okay, Mom. I know most people would think this way." I turned on the computer, entered a URL, and opened a hidden website. My avatar showed 4/21. There were still 17 days left until then. That was the day I died in my previous life, and my account would expire on that day, and I could no longer access this page. "What's this?" Mom asked me in confusion. I told her, "I found this by chance a few days after I was reborn. It's a place exclusively for reborn people. Our identities are absolutely hidden here, so there's no need to worry about any trouble." I posted the news about the apocalypse on it. "Don't worry, we may not be able to do much, but there are definitely people who will handle it." Only then did Mom feel reassured. No wonder I saw construction everywhere these days. I thought I just didn't notice it in my previous life. I patted her gently. "So don't worry. Relax and think about your hobbies so you can pass the time in the next few days. Don't worry about other things." The day before the extreme heat arrived, the temperature began to rise gradually. Fortunately, there was enough electricity, and the air conditioner worked well, so the heat wasn't too obvious. These days, we weren't idle but were busy checking for anything missing or incomplete. Mom knew the benefits of the space and specially cooked a lot of food so that we could eat it directly when the apocalypse came, without having to worry about any trouble caused by cooking. After all, it's better to avoid unnecessary trouble. Just because the house is renovated doesn't mean everything is perfect. Genevieve finally discovered the secret of the bracelet. Although she managed to get it, she couldn't activate the space no matter what. She thought it would only appear when the apocalypse arrived. However, as the apocalypse approached, she became uneasy and came to our door. Fortunately, I had the foresight to install surveillance cameras all over the house, which also served as a way to pass the time. Genevieve knocked on the door so loudly that the neighbors couldn't help but open their doors. "What are you doing? Don't you know there are other people here?" Genevieve had run out of patience and retorted, "So what? It's my home. What does it have to do with you?" The neighbor obviously disliked her and said directly, "You knock on the door to get into your own home. Don't think we don't know what kind of person you are, an ungrateful wretch. Stop pretending. You drove your parents away." Genevieve got anxious. "What do you mean? My parents aren't home. Where did they go?" The neighbor looked at her disdainfully. "You don't even know this. I really wonder if you're their real daughter." With that, in front of Genevieve, whose face turned red and then pale, the neighbor closed the door. However, Genevieve didn't care. If I wasn't there and she couldn't open the space, she would be in big trouble, so she stopped everyone in the neighborhood and asked them. Finally, she learned that I had taken Mom and Dad out to relax and wouldn't be back for a while. She couldn't believe it and called me several times, but none of the calls went through. Genevieve understood that we were extremely angry and wouldn't pay attention to her in the short term. She cursed at the phone viciously and had no choice but to hurry back to the old house. 7. As the ground temperature soared rapidly, it reached 40 degrees Celsius in just one day and continued to rise. Many people gradually noticed something was wrong. At this rate, it wasn't impossible for the temperature to exceed 50 degrees Celsius, which quickly caused panic among some people. Fortunately, when the country intervened in time, the underground shelters that had been under construction everywhere were opened to the public, providing shelter for those who couldn't survive in the extreme heat. Overall, as long as everyone worked together, they could get through the difficulties of the apocalypse. However, Genevieve, who was busy setting up the old house in the suburbs, obviously didn't hear the news and was still focused on taking care of Everett and his troublesome mother. The space was limited, so she had to store the food in the cellar. As the temperature rose, only the dry food seemed to have barely avoided spoilage. Food suddenly became scarce, and Everett's mother was very dissatisfied and scolded Genevieve every day. Although Genevieve was domineering at home, she was speechless in the face of such obstacles, but all these had nothing to do with me. I was living quite comfortably in the spacious villa. Although we saw the notice, Mom, Dad, and I chose to stay in the villa, not to mention that this place was safe with few people after our renovation, and I didn't have to worry about my space being exposed. Enjoying the cool air from the air conditioner and having an abundance of delicious food, I was extremely relaxed and happy. While the network was still working properly, I downloaded thousands of novels and movies and TV shows, so boredom was no longer a problem. My parents were different from me. Instead of indulging in pleasure, they weren't used to the sudden leisure after working hard for half their lives. They would occasionally go into the space to farm, their moods relaxed, and smiles appeared on their faces more and more often. Of course, we weren't completely cut off from the outside world. Besides listening to the radio every day to get information, I would also exchange information with others when the network was restored occasionally. In my previous life, I only stayed in the apocalypse for a short time, but experiencing the endless heat this time, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. Fortunately, our family was safely reunited this time. 3 months later, the temperature began to drop slowly. However, after a heavy rain, the temperature plummeted from over 60 degrees Celsius to minus 60 degrees Celsius. The extreme cold didn't come as gradually as the extreme heat, if the country hadn't issued a warning in advance. Many people might not have survived that long night. After experiencing the extreme heat, we obviously couldn't adapt to the sudden extreme cold. We turned on the floor heating and electric stoves at the same time and barely managed to keep the room temperature within a bearable range. Suddenly, the computer issued a harsh alarm, and we remembered Genevieve. Checking the surveillance records, we found that they had returned to the neighborhood from the old house during the heavy rain. However, the neighborhood was empty, and they couldn't get in, so they had to force the door open. We could hardly recognize Genevieve. She had lost so much weight in 3 months that it was shocking. Everett and the others weren't much better. The 3 of them were thin, sallow, and covered in filth. Thinking about it, it wasn't surprising. After all, the basement of the old house was just a simple earthen kiln, although it could barely withstand the apocalypse. Anyone would have a hard time staying in that small, dark place for 3 months. You said your house had food. Why is there nothing here? Everett's mother was still overbearing and used her last bit of strength to blame Genevieve. Naturally, we didn't leave any food behind, and when people entered the underground shelters, they tried their best to take all the supplies with them. It would undoubtedly be very difficult for them to find food even if they went out. Genevieve was miserable. She had done nothing at home and could occasionally lose her temper, but she was clearly overwhelmed when it came to taking responsibility. She looked at Everett for help, but Everett just wrapped himself tightly in a thick quilt and gave her a cold stare. "Didn't you say you would help me get through the apocalypse? Then do it." Helpless, Genevieve gritted her teeth, wrapped herself up, and went out to look for food. Even if she found food, she still had to endure the obstacles from Everett's mother. This time, Mom and Dad didn't react at all. They just said indifferently, "She brought it upon herself," and then ignored them. 8. Surprisingly, the extreme cold seemed much shorter than the extreme heat. After a heavy rain 2 months later, the apocalypse finally ended. Whether it was us or the others who came out from underground, we were all dazed when we saw the scene on the ground. There were no expected cheers. Everyone just hugged each other, feeling lucky to have survived, and silently wiped the tears from their eyes. This time, thanks to the existence of Reborn people, the country managed to prevent a major disaster. But would we be so lucky next time? Anyway, the most urgent task now is post-disaster reconstruction. However, unexpectedly, Genevieve was still alive. When she was found, she stared blankly, hardly looking like a normal person. Everett wasn't in a much better condition. Behind them, A bloody corpse silently told how they had survived the apocalypse. It wasn't until she saw the dense crowd around her, all frowning and looking at her, that Genevieve finally showed some normal emotions and broke down, shouting, "Help me, hurry, take me away from here." It turned out that in the extremely cold weather, they couldn't find any food, and they couldn't survive due to the low temperature. So they crawled all the way to the basement of the neighborhood. When they left, most of the messy things in the neighborhood had been piled here. The thick pile of things had saved their lives in the extreme cold, but Everett's mother was old, and due to various problems with the climate and food, she lost her life as soon as she crawled into the basement. Without food, it goes without saying what Genevieve and the others did to survive. As soon as she saw us, Genevieve almost cried and begged us to take her away. However, when she clearly saw that we were unharmed, she asked in confusion, "Why are you all okay?" Someone couldn't stand it and said coldly, "Before the extreme weather, the country had called on everyone to take shelter. I'm afraid only you were silly enough not to go." Upon hearing this, Genevieve instantly broke down. "No, it shouldn't be like this. It clearly wasn't like this in my previous life. It shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be like this. You're all lying to me, right? Are you crazy?" For a moment, everyone started whispering and talking. Only I whispered in her ear, "Of course it's because we've all been reborn." Genevieve immediately widened her eyes in horror and said in disbelief, "Then why did you still?" I smiled at her and said, "Sister, sometimes living is more painful than dying, isn't it?" Soon, the story of what happened to Genevieve in the basement spread like wildfire. What they did under extreme weather, though understandable, made people uncomfortable. What's more, there were clearly better options available to them. It's just unexpected that even though she had personally killed me, Mom, and Dad in the previous life, she could still talk to us without batting an eyelid. Before, she could slack off, relying on her parents to take care of everything, but now that she knew we were also reborn, she didn't dare to approach us and started to hide in fear. And her life was no different from when the apocalypse was ongoing. She and Everett eventually ended up together. No matter what, Everett's mother was his biological mother, and he blamed everything on Genevieve, even though they could only live under a bridge. Whenever Everett was in a bad mood, Genevieve would be severely beaten. My mother once wondered, we were so good to Genevieve, but Everett never treated her nicely. Why did she kill us for that man? However, blood ties are indeed a mysterious thing, and simple love can't easily change them. In Genevieve's view, since Mom and Dad adopted her, they shouldn't have had another child and should have poured all their love into her alone. It was precisely because she knew how much Mom and Dad loved her that she dared to vent her dissatisfaction confidently and use it to demonstrate against me. However, in fact, she was the only one who truly minded that Mom and Dad had another child. Anyway, a wrong is a wrong. As I said, sometimes living is more tormenting than dying, and she brought all this upon herself. Story 2. With just 3 hours left before the zombie attack, I was reborn in the arms of a stranger. Kill me. I finally resigned myself to tell him, because that was our only hope for survival. The last button on my dress was undone when I suddenly opened my eyes and pushed him away. What's wrong? The man, half-dressed, was interrupted and looked at me quizzically with a raised eyebrow. What was wrong with me? I glanced at my phone. It was 11:53 p.m. I wiped the tears from the corner of my eyes, feeling somewhat dazed. Was it just a vivid nightmare fueled by alcohol, or had I really been bitten by a zombie, mutated, and then reborn? Wrapped tightly in the blanket, I shivered uncontrollably, unsure of how to respond to him. If you don't want to continue, I won't force you. Clearly uncomfortable, the man stood up and walked into the bathroom without saying much more. Feeling woozy, I looked around the unfamiliar hotel room, trying hard to remember. That's right, today I had caught my boyfriend cheating and decisively broke up with him. Later at night, I went to a bar alone to drown my sorrows. While tipsy, I noticed a man who stood up from the crowd as he left a private room. His clean-cut business attire seemed out of place in the garish, indulgent setting of the bar. That's when I set my sights on him. Why should I be faithful in love only to be betrayed? If that scumbag could hook up with a rich woman, why couldn't I attract a successful man? In a surge of drunken impulse, I threw myself at him. I knocked my throbbing head a few times, desperately trying to recall the nightmarish scenes that followed. In my memory, we did not continue our intimate encounter. Instead, I suddenly lost control of my emotions, clung to him, and sobbed up my grievances for a long time until I fell into a confused sleep. He indeed didn't take advantage of me, he just listened to my emotional outpouring for hours, until a loud door slam woke me abruptly from his embrace. As soon as we turned on the light, we saw a blood-covered waiter collapse at the foot of our bed, his face as pale as paper, crying out in terror, "Zombies! There are zombies! They're eating people!" I looked at my phone in astonishment. It was 2:50 a.m. The soundproofing in the star-rated hotel was excellent, but at that moment, chilling roars and deafening banging on the door from outside scared me terribly. The most horrifying thing was, just as we had managed to get dressed, the waiter mutated. Suddenly, her eyes blood-red and ferocious, she lunged at me, biting the hand I used to push her away. Pain. The pain made me sweat instantly, and I screamed in agony as I desperately kicked at her, but she still tore a piece of flesh from my hand. "Are you all right?" The man rushed over and knocked the waiter to the ground, anxiously inquiring about my condition. Before I could speak, the waiter sprang up from the ground with unnatural speed, lunging towards the man who was closer to her. I could clearly see the flesh from my hand still hanging in her gaping, bloodied mouth. "Watch out!" I cried out in terror, and the man was tackled to the ground, struggling with the waiter. Despite my fear, I tried to get up to help him, but suddenly felt dizzy, and the wound burned intensely. Pain, like boiling oil coursing through my veins with my blood, made me scream madly. The last thing I remember was the man desperately breaking the waiter's neck, and then I frantically lunged at him. "I'll be going first. Your car is parked in front of the hotel. Feel free to call room service before you check out tomorrow. I'll cover the costs." The man's voice interrupted my recollections. I saw him already neatly dressed, his figure trim and austere, the epitome of restraint. I wanted to speak, but he had already picked up his suit and left through the door, swallowing the words that almost slipped out. I sighed deeply. It was just a fleeting encounter fueled by alcohol. Why would he believe me if I told him that zombies were about to arrive? Even I couldn't be sure myself that the zombies would come in 3 hours, yet, feeling terribly anxious, I quickly got up, washed up, grabbed my bag, and rushed home. What if those memories were real? Although the waiter had burst in at 2:50 a.m., that didn't mean the zombies outside would only appear then. I needed to get home as quickly as possible. While in the car, I called my roommate Chloe, who was still watching a midnight movie with her boyfriend celebrating their anniversary. I urged them to stop watching and come home immediately. Then, in the middle of the night, I could only go to a 24-hour convenience store, where I grabbed a lot of water, bread, instant noodles, and other daily necessities. I nearly cleared out several shelves, and the store clerk almost thought I was robbing the place. The streets were quiet in the early hours, and I reached the underground parking garage by 1:33 a.m. I called Chloe again. They said they were almost home, so I started moving stuff by myself, although I had carefully checked my surroundings and everything was dead quiet. A security guard zombie suddenly appeared and knocked me down as I was bending over to grab things from the trunk. The zombie, incredibly strong, bit directly into my throat. I didn't even have a chance to struggle. Blood choked my airways, and my screams abruptly ended. I could only desperately gasp for air, feeling like a fish pressed down on a cutting board. So zombies were real, and so was rebirth. Was the purpose of my rebirth just to be bitten by a zombie again? Suddenly, amidst hazy gasps, as I screamed and kicked the man who was bent over my neck away, I opened my eyes to find, damn, I had reborn back to my bed again. "You're crazy." The man fell to the floor unprepared, his face contorting with pain and anger. I covered my neck, where he had left a hickey, feeling the heat and trembling of my skin. "Sorry, I didn't mean to kick you," I hurriedly explained. Then, trembling, I checked my phone. 11:53 p.m. Indeed, I had been reborn again. "If you don't want to continue, just say it. I won't force you." He seemed very angry but didn't continue to lash out at me. He stood up, his disheveled, strong physique particularly tempting. Unable to look him in the eye, I quickly turned around and explained, "I was just killed by a zombie, and I've just come back. We don't have time to continue. We need to prepare some supplies and think of a way to survive." I spoke anxiously, hoping he would believe me. The man looked at me with a slight surprise and then smirked, turning to walk into the bathroom. It was clear he thought I was either an idiot or treating him like one. "I'm serious. Zombies might be out there eating people right now. It's getting more dangerous by the minute," I explained loudly. But he closed the bathroom door without turning back, ignoring me completely. Hopelessly, I glanced at my phone again. 11:56 p.m. No point waiting if he didn't believe me. I couldn't afford to waste time. I quickly got dressed and left the house, calling Chloe to urgently come home. At that moment, everything outside was calm, with no news on the internet. It was the calm before the storm. After clearing out the shelves of the convenience store near my building entrance, I paid a delivery guy to bring the goods up using the elevator, and then I locked myself early at home. I was just a 25-year-old ordinary office worker. I'm no elite female warrior. How could I not be terrified facing those brutal, ferocious zombies? I hope that this time, we can stay safely at home and hold out until rescue arrives. After all, the zombie outbreak happened in the early hours when most people were asleep at home. Perhaps if we can hold on for a while, the military will be able to eliminate the infected, That's what I tell myself to find some comfort, but Chloe and her boyfriend Blake didn't come home early as usual. At 1:38 a.m., the door burst open, and there was Blake, biting into the back of Chloe's neck as they stumbled into the hallway. "Scarlett, help, save me." Chloe's cream-colored coat was soaked with blood as she lay on the ground, desperately reaching out to me, her face a mess of tears and blood. I screamed like a madwoman and rushed forward, swinging a hammer I had found earlier, frantically smashing it down on Blake. I had no family left. Chloe was my only close friend. Since college, we had been inseparable, almost like sisters. Warm, bloody fluid mixed with some unidentifiable liquid splattered all over me. I felt like vomiting, wanted to hide in a corner and cry my eyes out. But I wanted to save Chloe more, even though I knew it was too late. Finally, Blake lay motionless on the floor, and my hands trembled uncontrollably as tears streamed down my face. But just as I thought it was over, Chloe suddenly leaped up from the ground and lunged at me with a ferocity far beyond any wild beast. Looking into the familiar yet estranged face of Chloe, I knew I had lost any chance of escape. The strength of a zombie was too much for an ordinary woman like me to withstand. Not wanting to be bitten, my mind went blank, and I ran to the balcony and jumped from the 6th floor. I thought jumping would be a swift end, but as my consciousness faded, I lay sprawled in the flower bed below, still unable to escape the hellish pain of my shattered body. Idiot, I really wasn't thinking. I'll never jump from a low floor again. When I opened my eyes again, the insane pain still lingered in my mind. I clung to the man beside me, shaking uncontrollably, unleashing all the screams I couldn't voice before I died in bed. "You." The man looked up at me in astonishment, his eyes as clear and bright as obsidian, full of disbelief. He must have never encountered a woman who screamed so tragically in bed. Realizing what was happening, I covered my eyes with one hand, feeling the hot tears on my cheeks. "I'm not assaulting you, am I?" The man seemed unsure, cautiously moving away from me. "I'm truly sorry. I know it's very uncomfortable for a man to be interrupted like this, but I had to. Sorry." "It's not your fault. I have something urgent. I need to go." I pushed him aside and staggered into the bathroom to wash my face, trying to sober up completely. I wanted to survive, to save Chloe, not to resign myself to fate. I believed that being given a second chance at life must have a special purpose, not just to leave me caught between living and dying. Quickly getting ready to leave, I glanced back at the man standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows and offered a final friendly warning. "The zombie virus outbreak is imminent. Go home quickly. Stock up on food and drinks, and make sure you lock your doors." He looked back at me, frowning. I knew he wouldn't believe me and turned to leave, checking my phone. It was 12:08 a.m. This time I went straight to the cinema to find Chloe, dragging them desperately home. This time we managed to escape home with supplies in time, but zombies seem to have particularly sharp hearing. Just a brief argument between Chloe and Blake attracted a zombie that banged on our door. As time went on, the sounds of doors slamming, windows breaking, and screams filled the building. I ran to the balcony and saw a man across the street, desperately running out of his bedroom holding his blood-covered child, shouting for help. Just as he opened his front door, a woman caught up to him and tackled him viciously. Some people, overwhelmed like me, jumped from their buildings, others screamed as they fled their homes, and some even grabbed knives to defend themselves against their once loved ones turned violent. More and more lights turned on, but the once cozy nights were replaced with horrific scenes of slaughter. It turned out that some had already been infected, and the person next to you might suddenly turn into a demonic mutant. What on earth was happening? How did these mutations occur? I couldn't figure it out. Then, a second and third zombie appeared at our door. Even as we hid silently in the bedroom closet, the zombies outside banged against the door relentlessly like perpetual motion machines. Trembling, I checked my phone. It was 2:36 a.m. I realized that in my previous deaths, I had died too early to know that within an hour, the entire complex would turn into a zombie playground. The virus spread incredibly fast, and the zombies were unusually strong. Was there anywhere left safe in this city? Clutching a hammer, my heart turned to ice. Eventually, our security door was broken through, and the bedroom door couldn't withstand the blows either. We were annihilated. Opening my eyes again, I resolved to find Chloe. Since the security door couldn't keep the zombies out, we decided to drive out of the city, hoping that other places might not have been affected by the virus. The first time we hit the road smoothly, but when passing through the neighboring county, we found the roads blocked by cars from an accident. As we tried to turn around and find another route, we were quickly surrounded by 5 or 6 zombies. Our car was overturned, and no one escaped. The last thing I saw was the time flashing on the car's display, 2:35 a.m. It turned out the virus had already spread to the neighboring county, and in considerable numbers. Next time, we continued to flee. I informed Chloe and the others about the zombie virus outbreak and strongly suggested despite their initial skepticism, that we take a different route to a less populated countryside in hopes of finding refuge. But as we left a small supermarket at a gas station in the suburbs, we saw a zombie biting into a woman's throat just a few meters away under a streetlight, blood splattering everywhere. They finally believed what I had said, and Chloe screamed in terror. The zombie, alarmed, growled and lunged at us. I was accidentally tripped by one of them. And Blake pulled Chloe and ran. Zombies bite the last person first. Let's run. Scarlett, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Chloe cried, looking back and apologizing, but she didn't stop running, even managing to carry 2 large bags of food with her. Though a zombie was formidable, the 3 of us could likely have overcome it together, but apparently, I wasn't worth their life-risking effort. How ridiculous. The close friend I persistently tried to save could abandon me at any moment. Such is human nature. I died again, not just in body but with an exceptionally cold heart. Back in bed, I hugged my partner and cried hysterically for several minutes, mourning my tragic friendship, and then continued to flee amidst his astonished gaze. This time, I didn't seek out Chloe but instead secured the presidential suite at the top floor of a building. I gathered a huge pile of supplies from the supermarket, telling the hotel staff I was planning a party the next day and that no one should enter without my call. I closed the heavy bronze doors of the presidential suite behind me, gasping for breath. With only an hour or 2 to prepare, where could I go? Once out of the city, where would I find refuge? Remembering the zombies' terrifying strength and keen senses, I didn't expect the bronze doors to hold them off for long. And being trapped inside, I would inevitably run out of water and food. All I wanted was a quiet place to survive a few more days, gather more information, and organize my thoughts. At least I could plan and prepare better for the next escape, no longer flitting about like a headless fly, without guns, and unable to purchase enough sleeping pills. Surviving is hard, and dying neatly is just as difficult. Each time being bitten to death felt like undergoing purgatory over and over, with despair and breakdown just a step away. That's why I chose a room on the top floor of the hotel, thinking that if I were cornered by zombies, jumping from the small balcony would be less painful. At 2 a.m., standing before the floor-to-ceiling windows and looking down, I could see more and more people desperately running in the streets. Cars collided in the distance, emitting eerie flames. The Star Hotel's windows were so well soundproofed that only a faint noise could be heard. Due to the pneumonia epidemic, the hotel's occupancy rate was not high, so for the first time, I cried myself to exhaustion and fell asleep, oblivious to the situation outside. Suddenly, there was a violent banging on the door, which made my scalp tighten. Miss Scarlett, please open the door, please let us in, there are monsters outside. I had miscalculated. Hotel staff had access cards to use the private elevator to the top floor, and some knew I had stocked up on supplies. So it was no surprise they would flee here. I heard 2 beeps, signaling someone outside was using a MasterCard to unlock the door, but I had already locked the door from the inside and wedged it shut with the back of a chair. Gritting my teeth, I was torn inside. 5 or 6 minutes had passed. It seemed there were no bitten people outside. Should I let them in? If they kept knocking like that, they would eventually attract zombies. And I feared the bronze door wouldn't withstand an onslaught of so many zombies. Zombies are too ferocious. It's hard to survive alone. Should I try banding together for survival? Even if I lose, I'd have a chance to start over, so it's worth a try to save a few people. So, I gritted my teeth and removed the barricades, but just as I opened the door, the elevator doors also opened, and several zombies rushed out, clawing at the elevator doors. There was also a person lying in the elevator, bloodied and twisted beyond recognition. It was bad luck. My heart clenched. It was too late to close the door. 6 or 7 men and women outside screamed desperately, pushing open the door and leading in zombies like demons from hell. Save me, please. A waiter bitten on the ankle fell to the ground, desperately crying and clutching my legs, his fingertips digging into my flesh as painfully as being torn by zombies. Under the cold night wind on the balcony, I ultimately couldn't jump, and once again became a feast for the zombies. My flesh was torn apart, and just before closing my eyes, I watched myself being disemboweled. Damn the idea of banding together. I really brought this on myself. Despair and intense pain gradually devoured my sanity, and tightly closing my eyes couldn't escape the bloody and horrifying demonic faces. I could only madly resist in vain. No, get away, stop. What are you doing? A man's angry shout came. Yet again, there was the ambiguous light, the comfortable big bed, the faint aroma of alcohol mixed with the sweaty scent, everything so enchantingly tempting. The man's face, however, looked terrible. He had several bloody marks on his face and exposed shoulders, which were shocking to see. But I'm back. Finally, I had returned from that terrifying place. Each time I felt myself sinking into hell, this man would appear. Seeing him, I knew the pain was over. At least this cycle of death was. Tears suddenly fell like a torrential downpour, quickly wetting the pillow beneath me. I couldn't help crying again, this time not wanting to stop, ever. The anger on his face slowly faded, and he carefully let go of my hands, somewhat at a loss. Did I hurt you, or are you having second thoughts? I shook my head desperately, crying so hard I couldn't catch my breath. Forget it, if you don't want to, just say so. I won't. The man thought I was regretting and resisting fiercely. So he started to get dressed, thinking of leaving. In panic, I threw myself at him, clinging tightly around his waist, pleading, "Don't go, stay with me, please stay with me." His strong heartbeat and the warmth of his body proved he was a real, living person, the only lifeline I could grasp as I was on the brink of collapse. Am I a fool? After all this turmoil, I haven't lived any longer, actually. Those first 3 hours I stayed by his side were the most peaceful, indeed. Just like the first time, he didn't leave. Instead, he leaned back against the headboard, spread his arms, and let me cry into his chest without minding the tears soaking his shirt, even handing me tissues. Only when my crying subsided to sobbing did he speak, heartbroken. "It's not worth it for such a man." I was slightly startled, taking another tissue from him. Before my first rebirth, he had said the same. That time, I had indeed been crying over a worthless man, but not now. After several cycles of life and death, some people had faded into insignificance, yet this man, whom I thought was a stranger, had become the object of my current desire. "Yeah, you're right, but it's not about romance that I'm breaking down." He was right. It's not worth it for someone unworthy. Curled up in his arms, I greedily enjoyed this moment of peace, feeling very reassured. "You looked really scared just now," he said. "What if I told you I just had a terrible nightmare? Would you believe me?" After wiping away my last tears, I looked up and noticed the scratches on his skin, bleeding slightly, and quickly apologized. He frowned lightly and said, "It's just a scratch, but is sleeping with me what caused your nightmare? All right, it was me who indulged in alcohol and dragged him to this room, and then I had a nightmare while he was so involved." That must have felt incredibly insulting to him. "No, it's not that. I'll explain in a moment. Let me get some medicine first." It was an awkward moment. I hurriedly dressed and called room service for antiseptic and other medical supplies. Then while applying the medicine, I detailed the cycles of rebirth I had just gone through. As I spoke, I tried to control my emotions, but my trembling hands, holding the cotton swab, betrayed my fear, perhaps fearing to trigger another breakdown. He didn't express disbelief this time. He listened quietly as I described my last moments being devoured by zombies. Then he picked up his phone. "It was 1:19 a.m. You said at 2:50 a.m. a waiter will burst into our room, attracting zombies, and then you'll get bitten and turn into a zombie, and bite me. You've been through many cycles of rebirth, sometimes turning into a zombie, sometimes being killed outright, and each time you wake up at 11:53 a.m. He succinctly repeated the key points I had told him, and I nodded in agreement. When we entered the room, we were both drunk, went straight to the point, and even forgot to lock the door, which otherwise wouldn't have allowed the waiter to easily swipe and enter for help. The man got up, started browsing videos and checking the news on his phone. The internet still seemed calm, but after a quarter of an hour, looking out from the 30th floor window, we could see chaos starting to erupt on the streets. Videos and comments about zombie attacks began appearing online. The outbreak of the zombie virus quickly became a trending topic. My heart, which had barely calmed, clenched tightly again, and I unconsciously hugged my arms. "It looks like this city is the epicenter of the virus," the man said gravely. At that moment, he had no choice but to believe. Indeed, I didn't know where the virus came from, but only after the outbreak in Pingmo City, where we were, did news of zombies start spreading online everywhere. It was clear that this area was among the first to experience the outbreak, and it was widespread, affecting the surrounding regions. He tried to make a call on his phone, but no one answered on the other end. Then, turning to me, he asked, "Why can you keep coming back to life?" "I don't know. If I'm doomed, I'd rather die once and for all, than die horribly over and over again. I'm really going insane." I clasped my head, overwhelmed once again by the horrific images flooding my mind. If anyone says you get used to dying, or that you stop fearing pain after enough of it, I'd be profoundly grateful. I was both terrified and furious. What did I do to deserve this? Why has fate chosen me to endure this endless torment? After all, my boyfriend cheated on me, my best friend abandoned me, I might as well have gone to see my parents sooner. Why must I live through this bloody, terrifying apocalypse in such unbearable pain? Heaven must have given you these chances to come back for a reason. It shows you are unique, definitely important to this world. The man suddenly spoke, gently prying my hands apart. "Tell me, do you want to die or do you want to live?" he asked. I was startled, then looked up to see the seriousness in his eyes. "I want to live. I don't want to die again." I nodded emphatically. "Right, as long as there's a sliver of hope." Who would choose death? Good, remember, my name is Ryan, I'm 29 years old. A lighting designer, and I run a lighting design company. My new cloud password, for 68169. When you see me next time, tell me these details straight away, and I'll take you to my friend's Nine Creeks Villa for refuge. Got it, he said solemnly, a place of refuge. I was overjoyed, silently repeating the information until I had memorized it, then I nodded vigorously. Then Ryan said, "There's no way out if we stay here, let's go, we need to try more ways to survive." Yes, okay. Maybe next time I would have a chance to survive, to escape the bone-deep despair and pain. Looking at the man before me, my will to live was reignited. At 2:03 a.m., we took the elevator down to the lobby, only to find it overrun. Waitstaff and passers-by were being bitten and torn at by zombies, their screams echoing amidst the shocking crimson all around. The light shining through the hotel's clear glass facade continuously attracted more zombies, their speed comparable to sprinters in a 100-meter dash. Upstairs, spotting zombies sprinting towards us, Ryan grabbed my hand and we dashed back towards the elevator. We had just risen half a floor when a thunderous bang sounded from the elevator doors below. The base of the elevator shook, and I gripped the handrail tightly, my heart skipping a beat. The strength and speed of these zombies mean that the chances of an ordinary person escaping them head-on are very slim. Listening to the zombies smashing through the elevator doors below and their eerie howls as they fell down the shaft, Ryan's expression grew grimmer, his body tensing up even more. Indeed, I felt that aside from a slightly longer mutation period, these zombies were only slightly less formidable than the strongest ones in World War Z. The virus has already spread outside. It's definitely tough to move on the ground now, however. There's a helipad on the hotel rooftop. Let's head up and see if we can wait for an aerial rescue. Ryan decisively made the decision, and I had no objections. Ryan's company was responsible for designing and installing the exterior lighting and the helipad of the hotel, so he led me straight to the rooftop entrance. However, the entrance was secured with an access control lock, and Ryan had to use a fire axe to break open the door. Soon after, panicked guests and staff began running up, eventually attracting the zombies. Everyone desperately held the door against the zombies, but the door couldn't withstand their frenzied battering, and eventually, the rooftop also fell prey to the rampaging zombies. There was simply nowhere safe in this city. Ryan and I stood on the edge of the 35th floor, the lights of fires twinkling below us, screams tearing through the night sky. The cold night wind fluttered my skirt, making me shiver. I glanced at the time one last time. It was 2:46 a.m. The height here will make it less painful. Don't be afraid, I'm here with you. His warm palm pressed against the back of my head, his arms tightened around my waist, and my vision went dark as I was locked in Ryan's strong embrace. The roar of the zombies was inches away, with the chilling sweep of their claws brushing my bare legs, causing my hairs to stand on end. In the last moment, I tightly wrapped my arms around his waist and fell with him from the 100-meter-high building. The sound of wind rushed by my ears, my head dizzy from the lack of oxygen as I slipped into unconsciousness, but being tightly held in his embrace, I wasn't so scared anymore. This time, I didn't scream. A slight pain from a gentle bite on my neck and the faint, familiar scent of the man brought me back from my dizziness, knowing he was now in high spirits. I really wanted to immerse myself further, but I couldn't delay any longer and had to push him away. Stop, get up first, but he seemed not to hear me, still trying to remove his last piece of clothing. To survive this time, I bit down hard and forcefully pushed him away with my knees. Ryan, stop and listen to me. He suddenly looked up at me, his face shifting from obsession to shock. How do you know my name? Ryan's gaze sharpened. I quickly grabbed the blanket to cover myself and hurriedly explained, I just came back from a rebirth after a zombie apocalypse. It was you in my past life who told me your name is Ryan. You're 29 years old, a lighting designer. You just changed your cloud password to 468169. You also said you would take me to Joshi Villa for refuge. Such jumbled information was obviously hard to accept, and Ryan was clearly shocked and confused, but time waits for no one. I got up to get dressed quickly. Don't just stand there, we need to leave. The zombie virus will spread soon. I'll explain in detail on the way. I checked my phone. It was 05 a.m. I really couldn't waste any more time. Picking up a coat from the floor and throwing it to him, I said anxiously, can we just pretend I want to change locations? I really don't want to be bitten to death by zombies over and over again. What's your name? He suddenly asked, staring at me. I'm Scarlett, 25 years old, a professional illustrator. I got heartbroken last night, so went to a bar to drown my sorrows. Then I saw you and thought you looked nice, so I approached you. I've died many times. Ryan finally accepted what I was saying. As he listened to me quickly recount the events, he got dressed neatly and was ready in no time. Your story is quite incredible, but I believe my password, which I just changed and wouldn't be known by anyone unless I told them myself. So for now, I'll trust you. Tell me, what do we do next? We need to get as far away from the city as possible, I said decisively. Before long, we were in his SUV parked outside the hotel, speeding along the normally quiet streets. The time was 12:20 a.m. I recounted my experiences of being reborn several times and summarized the characteristics of zombies again. Zombies are incredibly strong and fast. Once they charge, the impact is terrifying. And typical household security doors and windows can't stop them, I explained. Moreover, zombies have exceptionally sharp hearing and smell. The only way to kill them is to shoot them in the head. A slight bite or scratch from them can infect a human with the virus, which takes about 2 to 5 minutes to cause mutation. Zombies prioritize biting in crowded places. If there's no one else around, they might start devouring a person, I continued. Also, large, noisy groups are not suitable for survival, so it's best to avoid moving in teams. Nearby towns aren't safe either, and ordinary vehicles can't keep zombies out. These insights were bought with my own tragic and bloody experiences. Listening to me, Ryan looked serious. He first called his parents to make sure they were vacationing on an island and urged them not to return to the mainland. Then he called a friend and got through immediately, receiving a password. It turned out his friend was about to attend an important meeting, which is why he hadn't answered the phone last time. After hanging up, Ryan said, "The security at Joshi Villas is good, but the building has just been renovated. Except for electricity and water, there are no supplies. If we want to survive there, we'll need to bring everything: food, drink, clothing, everything." Since it was the middle of the night, there was no place to buy clothes or bedding, but we were close to my home, so we took a detour there. We arrived at my building at 12:42 a.m., moving quickly to avoid any zombies. Once inside, I quickly changed out of my dress into outdoor sportswear and running shoes, then packed up the bedding from my bed. Ryan efficiently filled a large suitcase with various necessities: laundry supplies, toilet paper, towels, a rice cooker, snacks, canned food, fruits, vitamin tablets. One suitcase was not enough. He eventually pulled out a bedsheet from the cupboard, using it as a wrapping cloth to make a big bag full of supplies. Seeing the capacity was enough, I also found a clean sheet in Chloe's room and packed my own clothes into another full bag. Realizing there was no place prepared for Ryan's clothes, I also packed some of Blake's jackets and trousers. Then we locked up and left. It was 1:06 a.m. when we drove out of the complex and headed to a 24-hour convenience store to raid for food and daily necessities. Ryan handed the clerk 30,000 yuan without waiting for each item to be scanned, just moving everything directly. We emptied the necessary shelves, even clearing out the storage room, until Ryan's large SUV was completely full. "You better close up and go home. Don't do business tonight," I advised the clerk, having already raided his store several times before. Just as we were leaving, I suddenly heard someone loudly calling me. "Scarlett." Buying so much stuff in the middle of the night, I stopped and looked towards the voice. Under the streetlight nearby, there was Chloe, one arm hooked through Blake's, the other waving high at me. She held a large bouquet of roses, smiling happily, completely unaware of the fast-moving, stumbling shadow with one arm missing, rushing towards them from behind. "Watch out behind you, run." My heart tightened, and I couldn't help but shout a warning to them. Chloe and Blake turned around in surprise to look. The man was merely 10 meters away from them, his ferocious and hideous face clearly visible under the streetlight. "Ah!" Chloe screamed in terror. Blake reacted quickly, grabbing Chloe and trying to run, but in high heels, Chloe couldn't run fast. In an instant, a zombie pounced on her ferociously, and her screams, accompanied by splattering blood, echoed through the street. Seeing this, Blake was so frightened that he let go of her hand and ran for his life. Meanwhile, the young man from the convenience store, hearing the commotion, rushed out without understanding the situation, attempting to help. "Don't go." My eyes welled up with tears as I quickly reached out to stop him, but the young man didn't heed me. "Get in the car." Ryan had already started the car and was shouting at me. As I saw Blake running towards us, I took one last look at Chloe, who was struggling in her last moments, clenched my teeth, turned around, and hurried into the passenger seat, slamming the door shut. "Scarlett, wait for me, wait for me." In the rearview mirror, I saw the convenience store guy get tackled, and Blake nearly grabbed the rear car door but was thrown off as Ryan floored the accelerator. The face of terror and anger flashed by and then disappeared from the rearview mirror. I knew he wouldn't survive. It was a pity about the young man. In the end, I had abandoned them too. I closed my eyes, took a couple of deep breaths, and forced the tears back, clenching my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my flesh, causing pain. "Don't worry, I won't leave you behind," Ryan suddenly said. I turned to look at him. His expression was solemn, and I slowly relaxed my grip. The car's display glowed. 1:36 a.m. An emergency broadcast interrupted the radio. It was early morning, and the streets were nearly empty. The virus hadn't yet spread widely. Ryan drove fast, and soon we were out of the city. We sped along passing car accident scenes without daring to stop for the cries for help. As we drove through a small town, a zombie suddenly charged at us head-on. "Run it over, don't stop the car," I yelled, gripping the handle above the passenger seat tightly. I remembered the scenes where cars had been stopped only to be smashed and overturned by several zombies, which made me break out in a cold sweat. Ryan hesitated for only a moment before slamming down on the accelerator, with a loud bang. The zombie was flung away, and the front of the car was heavily dented. At the same time, another zombie suddenly leaped from an overturned car at the roadside, coming straight at us. Then another thud. The zombie's head shattered the passenger side window. The mixture of red and white fluid smeared across the window, and I had to bite my lip hard to keep from vomiting. Luckily, Ryan's car was sturdy. If it had been my economical sedan, the glass would have probably shattered instantly. But if we endured a few more hits like that, even the SUV wouldn't hold up. With their terrifying strength, these fearless zombies were a formidable force. More zombies appeared one after another ahead, but thankfully, Ryan's driving skills were excellent, and the road wasn't blocked. He calmly maneuvered the car in an S-shape, effectively reducing some of the impact and sending several zombies in the dark night flying away. It wasn't until we had completely shaken off the zombies chasing us that I finally let go of the handle, realizing my palms were sweaty. After about half an hour of driving, we smoothly made our way to the mountains, turning onto a small road amidst dense woods. Soon, we saw a fenced area of about 500 to 600 square meters in the forest, with a 3-story building in the middle. Kyle is a physics genius, specializing in quantum mechanics. Recently, he went abroad with a government group for an academic exchange. He enjoys the tranquility, so he insisted on building a house alone in the mountains. "Let's go inside first, and he'll contact me after his meeting is over," said Ryan as he opened the gate to the yard and drove the car into the garage. He took out his phone to check the time. It was already 3:25 a.m. We finally made it out of the city alive, and I couldn't help but sigh with relief. After getting out of the car and seeing the body of the car covered in dents and stained with blood, I felt a wave of fright. We entered the house through the small door in the garage, and moved the supplies upstairs, trip by trip. The hard furnishings inside were already completed and cleaned. However, there were few pieces of furniture, and the whole house was empty, with some leftover decorating tools tossed in a corner. Fortunately, the kitchen and bathroom were fully equipped. After setting down our things, we first pulled down all the curtains and blinds on the first floor to check for security and to ensure no one outside could see inside. Then Ryan led me to the study, where he pressed a seemingly normal spot on the custom-built bookshelf, revealing a hidden keypad. I was amazed and widened my eyes. There was a secret mechanism. After entering the code, a row of bookshelves silently opened up to reveal a security door about 10 centimeters thick, with stairs leading downward behind it. Kyle likes to quietly work on his experiments, so the security is excellent. There's also a lab, storage, and a separate bathroom downstairs, though it's all empty now, Ryan explained, but the house's water and electricity can operate independently, and there's a satellite phone, radio, and full house surveillance video set up in the basement. The doors and windows are soundproofed and blast-resistant, so they should hold off a small number of zombies. Ryan showed me around, detailing the structure of the house. His phone rang at that moment, and Ryan quickly answered. "Kyle, we've arrived at Joshi Villa. How are things on your end?" "Ryan, I'm glad you're safe. The infection has been found abroad as well. I'm about to evacuate with the embassy staff and head back to the country to a secure base. I'll try to arrange a helicopter to rescue you guys once I'm back." Kyle's voice was breathless, clearly running and speaking urgently. Ryan quickly asked, "Do you know how the zombie virus started?" Kyle, being a nationally recognized physicist, might have access to information that others don't. It seems that the KB organization overseas released a biological virus in several major cities around the world at the same time. This primitive virus spread through water sources. After a certain period, people with susceptible constitutions begin to mutate and become poisoned. After mutation, the virus transitions to being spread through bodily fluids, infecting everyone. There is no vaccine yet, nor any immune individuals, so the situation is very severe. We need to prepare for a long battle. I need to handle some procedures. I'll contact you when I'm free," said Kyle, amidst a noisy backdrop. "Wait, let me ask one more thing. If a person could repeatedly resurrect at the same time and place after death, do you think that's possible?" "I remember you once mentioned a related theory," Ryan asked loudly. Hearing Ryan's words, my heart tightened and I listened intently. "Resurrection. The most likely scenario would be finding a time loophole coordinate to reset. That's exactly what I've been researching independently. No one has succeeded yet, but theoretically, it's possible." A lot of big shots laugh at me. saying I'm chasing fantasies. Why do you suddenly ask? Ryan glanced at me, hesitated for a moment, and then said, just curious. When you have time, let's discuss it in detail, he said. Something stirred inside me. Was he trying to protect me, afraid that I would become an experimental subject? Just curious. Kyle sounded puzzled over the phone. Then amidst a burst of noise, someone shouted his name, urging him to hurry up with the procedures. I'll get back to you as soon as I'm on the plane, Kyle yelled, then hung up. I let out the breath I had been holding, but then excitement surged through me. So, Ryan actually had such an incredible friend. Then what was all that about me repeatedly running out and getting devoured alive by zombies? No wonder he believed my sci-fi story of rebirth after I shared Ryan's personal information. It seems there was a reason fate brought me to him. Thank you, Ryan. Although Kyle said he wasn't successful just now, it doesn't mean he won't be in the future. Perhaps my rebirth was because of him. If we know the principle, there's hope for liberation. In short, I really don't want to go through death and back to life again. Of course, if I could keep living like this, that would be the best solution. At that moment, I finally felt that hope was limitless. We waited for Kyle to call again. But even by dawn, there was no ring. Ryan tried calling him, only to get a cannot connect message. My heart sank again, and I shared Ryan's worries. Had something happened to Kyle? As dawn broke, several zombies appeared outside the yard, constantly growling and violently hitting the gate and walls. Not good. Could it be that the car accidentally hit a person or an animal, leaving behind a trail of blood that attracted the zombies? Ryan and I had the same thought and hurried to the garage to check. Sure enough, we found a bloody black puppy corpse hooked in the gap of the dented rear bumper. It was too dark and rushed last night. None of us noticed. Just as we were about to clean up the corpse, the garage door suddenly made a loud bang and was dented in. Startled, I stumbled and fell to the ground. My heart clenched tightly, instantly unable to breathe. The zombies had entered the yard. Run. Ryan quickly picked up a steel spike from the ground and pulled me towards the small door of the garage. Bang. Bang, bang, 1, 2, more and more dents appeared on the garage door, growing larger. We hurriedly shut the small door tightly, and Ryan grabbed a nearby paint can, splashing half a bucket of paint onto the door. We then heard a loud crash as the garage door was knocked down. Ryan pulled me along, running to the study on the other side. Seeing that the zombies hadn't attacked the small door, we finally dared to breathe a sigh of relief. We looked at each other, hearts pounding. We couldn't enter the garage, and with 7 or 8 zombies wandering in the yard, we were trapped. In the following days, we had to be extremely careful inside the house, fearing any noise might alert them. However, we still couldn't get in touch with Kyle. Days later, many cities had completely fallen. News reports indicated that the zombie virus was spreading outward from several major cities, with the military struggling to defend, steadily losing ground. The same disaster was unfolding worldwide. The zombies' combat and infection abilities were too strong. If the virus spread couldn't be controlled, it would soon be the end of humanity. Gradually, external communications networks broke down, the weather grew colder, and our spirits heavier. We've tried contacting various local emergency services through satellite phone, but none of the calls went through. The radio did announce the addresses and contact numbers of survivors' bases, but unfortunately, they were all far from us. Even after we managed to contact a base, they could only suggest that we find our own way there. From the sporadic radio broadcasts, we learned that one by one, the survivors' bases on land were being destroyed. Fortunately, the island base where Ryan's parents were located was still intact. However, later their mobile signal was lost, and we lost contact with them too. Ryan and I had considered escaping, but being in one of the regions where the virus originated, there were hardly any survivors left around us, not to mention any rescue options. Outside were only zombies with overwhelming strength, and getting trapped by them meant slim chances of survival. But what if we don't hear from Kyle? Our supplies will soon run out. Then what? This house is our fortress protecting us, but it's also a prison with nothing left inside. During this agonizing wait, the temperature in the mountains quickly dropped below zero. I only brought one set of bedding, which we spread on the solid wood floor of the study, each of us sleeping on one side. Initially, we slept distantly like the demilitarized zone, politely and clearly separated, but one morning when I woke up, I found myself curled up in Ryan's arms. He didn't push me away. Instead, he held me tighter, careful not to let the cold air seep in. Gradually, I got used to waking up in his arms, accustomed to his companionship in this cold, hopeless world. As time swiftly passed, we've been trapped here for 46 days. Waking up in the morning and peering through the slit in the curtains, I saw heavy snow falling outside. The air was bone-chillingly cold, and I really didn't want to leave Ryan's warm embrace. We only have enough food for 2 or 3 more days, and Kyle probably won't call or send help. Ryan, kill me. Let's start over. His body tensed noticeably. After a moment, I was pulled into his chest, feeling our heartbeats pounding louder and louder. You said you didn't want to die again, his voice low and slightly bitter. I looked up at him and smiled faintly. Yes, I'm afraid of pain, I don't want to die, but dying one more time is for a new hope. Don't worry, I brought painkillers from home, it won't hurt this time. I really dislike when the game level gets too high and having to restart from the beginner village, but being able to start over. Isn't that also a kind of fortune? At this point, I'm thankful I can be reborn, starting everything over, though there's always a faint unease and regret in my heart, because he will forget me, and won't remember any of these hard days we've spent together. Although we lie together, warming each other, he has never made a more intimate move, instead being somewhat cautious, but the more he does this, the more my heart flutters, I admit. I've become greedy, initially coveting his body, his looks. Now I also covet his heart, but I'm really useless, having died so many times without any progress, unable to save our lives. Once we're reborn and successfully escape, I must confess to him. That's what I was thinking. Then shortly after getting up, due to the stress, my long-delayed period finally began. The noses of the zombies outside are much sharper than a dog's. Soon, they became agitated and swarmed toward the house, screeching and slamming into the glass and walls. Even more terrifying was that their howls could attract even more zombies. Even if I hid in the sealed basement, the zombies outside didn't disperse, but at least they were less restless. When I go back after being reborn, contraceptives are essential. If that doesn't work out, tampons are better than sanitary pads. After rebirth, we need to outpace the spread of the zombie virus and head straight for the island base before it spreads completely. The dangers on the road are many, and the chances of survival outside are slim, but I still have a chance to fight. If it doesn't work out the first time, I'll keep trying, and if all else fails, I'll die and start over. In any case, I'm determined to fight until I can survive with him. I'm not afraid of dying again. I made up my mind quietly. Once I memorized all the information and escape routes from the radio and handed Ryan the steel spike, then, grabbing a handful of painkillers, I bravely said, taking too many painkillers will knock me out, just aim straight for my heart so I won't feel a thing. Let's do this. Ryan's veins on the back of his hand bulged, his chest heaving more intensely than mine. As I was about to swallow the pills, my arm was suddenly yanked away. No, I can't kill you. I don't want to forget you. Scarlet, there's still a chance. Let's wait. Maybe we'll think of another way to escape. Maybe if we hold on a few more days, Kyle might bring help. Ryan dropped the spike and gripped my shoulders, pinching them painfully. I opened my eyes in surprise, my heart beating wildly. Could it be that he might have feelings for me? Just then, the satellite phone in the basement suddenly rang. Could it be Kyle? We exchanged a glance of wild joy. Ryan snatched the pills from my hand and rushed to answer the phone, but after just a few words, the smile that had just appeared on Ryan's face froze. He looked at me, his eyes slowly reddening. All I knew was that it was Kyle's assistant on the line, and he said, "Kyle is dead. What happened?" I asked cautiously after a while. As Ryan hung up the phone, he missed the first flight back to the country by just a step. He and a few other scientists from our country were kidnapped by local agents. It took our country more than a month to negotiate their return, but Kyle was attacked by zombies there on the way back. Ryan choked up and stopped. It was the first time I saw tears in his eyes. Once the zombie virus outbreak began, the veneer between nations was ripped apart. It seemed that scientists had become a valuable resource coveted by all countries in this apocalyptic world. Now, the apocalypse seemed to be a man-made disaster caused by everyone scrambling for resources. During his captivity, Kyle never stopped thinking about rescuing Ryan. His assistant called Ryan as soon as he escaped. I understood the pain Ryan felt losing his close friend. I stepped forward and rubbed his shoulder, comforting him. Don't worry, we still have a chance. When I go back after being reborn, I'll have you call Kyle immediately. Tell him he must catch that first flight. Suddenly, Ryan hugged me tightly, so tightly I almost couldn't breathe. Scarlet, you can't die. From the moment you survive 3 hours, you can't be reborn again, and neither can Kyle come back to life. Wow. I was utterly stunned. Owen has been working on projects with Kyle and is also an expert in quantum physics. Although he can't solve the difficulties of time reversal, his theories are clear. It was mentioned. He just said that the first time a person dies in reverse time, rebirth is a critical node. If the time of the first death is linked to the point of rebirth to form a circle, no matter how many times the reborn person dies and is reborn within this circle, and no matter what different events occur in between, the future remains unchanged. For example, if you are reborn about 3 hours before your first death, those 3 hours form a circle, as long as you die within those 3 hours. You will always be reborn at 11:53. Everything and everyone you've changed, including the whole world, will revert back to their original state. But now that you've lived past those 3 hours, you've stepped out of that circle and drawn a new timeline that didn't exist before, and you can't go back to that rebirth point. You've changed your own fate and that of others connected to you. This is a one-way straight line. Once it's broken, it's broken, just like any ordinary person. Hearing Ryan explain this, it took me a while to grasp the reality. So, if I just endure those 3 hours, I would have broken the vicious cycle of life and death. But when I want to die, I can't, and when I need to be reborn, I can't come back to life. Should I be happy or despair? What should we do next? Owen said he'd try to request help from the base. Don't worry, we'll find a way to escape, Ryan said solemnly. I knew he was trying to comfort me. Now, with severe shortages in manpower and firepower, and survivor bases continually being overrun by zombies, why would the authorities waste resources to rescue 2 insignificant people deep in a virus-infested area? If Owen's words were so effective, he wouldn't just say he'd try. Unless I report that I am a rebirth, would I then become a subject of experimentation, or once again a prisoner of time? The mere thought of not being able to control my own life or death made me shiver. If that were the case, I'd rather die, but thinking about the last few bags of instant noodles and snacks, I knew we couldn't wait any longer. Maybe you should tell Owen about my rebirth. Perhaps the base will take it seriously and send help sooner, I suggested. If Kyle were still here, it might be worth considering, but he's gone, and all the scientific data was destroyed. If someone really takes an interest in your rebirth, they might use you as a subject for repeated experiments. And I can't let you be treated like a lab monkey. Ryan hugged me again, holding on for a long time. It's all my fault. If I hadn't held him up with endless questions that day, he could have made the first evacuation flight, and we could have escaped. Ryan's voice was filled with despair. My nose tingled with sadness. But how could I blame Ryan? It was because he wanted to ask Kyle about my rebirth that we were delayed. Now that Kyle is dead, the chance of me being reborn again might never come. And we are trapped here with only death awaiting us. With tears welling up in my eyes, I wrapped my arms around Ryan's waist and said softly, "It's not your fault. Kyle would definitely want you to live well. I don't want to drag Ryan down with me. If it could secure his chance of survival, I'm willing to make that call. Perhaps this is the meaning of my rebirth. At least I can save him, and there is still hope for us to live." Suddenly, I felt a cold sensation beneath me. I had a bad feeling, reached down, and touched. Just as I feared, my period had started. I had thought I might be reborn back, so I hadn't brought a new sanitary pad down. This time my period was delayed for quite a while, and when it came, it was unusually heavy. All I could do was blush and tell Ryan, who didn't hesitate to go fetch some things for me. As soon as we opened the sealed safety door of the basement, the zombies outside, visible through the surveillance cameras, became restless and started banging on the walls and windows. Damn it, this apocalypse is really unforgiving for women. I hurried into the small bathroom, locking the door tightly behind me. The basement was empty, devoid of any furniture, and the cold, icy floor was not suitable for sleeping. The upstairs, however, was relatively safe, and it was convenient to retreat to the basement in case of danger. So we had been sleeping on the solid wood floor of the study. No, I couldn't just give up. I had to continue finding ways to survive. On the days of my period, I dared not leave the basement. After Ryan brought me the sanitary products, he went to fetch the bedding and other necessities. Changing my underwear and sanitary pad wasn't enough. I also needed to change my thermal pants and quickly wash off the bloodstains. Ryan, I need to change my thermal pants too, I said awkwardly. Knocking on the bathroom door, "I'll gather the laundry, just stay inside, I'll wash the dirty clothes, don't worry about it," he said from outside before hurriedly running off. We only had 2 sets of thick clothes to change into, and I had just washed one set yesterday, because it was cold and damp, and we dared not open the curtains on the first floor. The clothes were hanging to dry in a south-facing room on the second floor. For now, I could only remove my blood-stained thermal pants, rinse them in the sink to dilute the blood, and shiver as I waited for him. Soon, I faintly heard a loud boom from the surveillance cameras outside. My heart skipped a beat. I quickly pulled on some cleaner outer pants and ran to check the monitors. The scene almost stopped my heart. The house's walls and windows were quite sturdy and the zombies hadn't gone completely berserk, so they were holding up, but to my horror, somehow a zombie had managed to climb onto the beautiful tiled roof of the small attic on the 3rd floor and had smashed a hole through it. It was now roaring as it charged downward. The world had gone mad. Our house, which had no burglar bars or anything that could aid zombies in climbing, somehow still had a zombie make it to the roof of the 3rd story. Seeing Ryan holding clothes and just coming downstairs, desperately running back, sent a cold sweat down my spine. I picked up a steel spike from the ground and ran to the stairs. At the basement door, I saw a small, fierce zombie lunging towards Ryan, who had just dashed into the study. As its filthy, sharp claws were raised high, my mind exploded in panic, and I screamed, "Ryan!" The zombie suddenly turned towards me, its deep red, murky eyes glaring menacingly, like a devil eyeing a blood feast. "Get back!" Ryan shouted at me. Using the moment the zombie paused to rush forward and tackle it by the waist. Flipping it onto the ground, he was risking his life to save me. In that instant, I snapped back to reality. I saw Ryan, his arms wrapped in clothing to fend off the zombie's sharp teeth, his face flushed red, his jacket already torn in several places by the zombie's claws. The zombies outside were furiously banging on the window. Without a second thought, I rushed forward and plunged the spike into the zombie's head with all my might. Kill it. Save Ryan. I was in a frenzy. 1 stab, 2 stabs. Dark, filthy blood and yellow, foul-smelling brain matter splattered everywhere. "Let's go." Ryan struggled to his feet, tightly gripping my arm. Only then did I snap out of my fear and madness. The glass continued to resound with thuds, and the frenzied howls of zombies outside were terrifyingly close. I hastily dragged the head-blasted zombie to a bookcase, hoping to mask our scent. Then Ryan pushed me into the room and staggered back a few steps himself. "Come on, get in here." I anxiously turned back to look at him. Ryan was gasping for breath, his body trembling, yet he stood frozen in place. Suddenly, it felt as if a needle had violently pierced my brain. I rushed to him, frantically wiping the blood that smeared his head and face. His pale face bore no wounds, neither did his neck, but when I tore open his tattered down jacket, I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. His apricot sweater was ripped in several places, soaked in a glaring, fresh red. "It's all right. It's all right. Not all zombie scratches lead to infection," I said, shaking my head desperately, trying to suppress my uncontrollable sobs. "He couldn't die, couldn't turn into a zombie." I hadn't even had the chance to tell him I liked him. Ryan's eyes were also red as he slowly lifted his right hand. The sight of a flesh-torn bite mark below his wrist shattered my last hope. I felt all strength drain from my body. The world around me turning bleak. "I'm sorry, Scarlett. I can't stay with you anymore. Call Owen. You must find a way to survive. Find my parents. Take care of them. Go now." His once bright black eyes turned increasingly bloodshot. It seemed he had much more to say, yet no chance to say it. "Ryan, I like you. Don't leave me, Ryan." My vision blurred with tears. I held him tightly and refused to let go, but he pushed me ruthlessly, mercilessly, into the basement. Then the heavy door closed, sealing away all my hopes. At the same time, the sound of breaking glass came from outside. I tumbled down the stairs, pain piercing through my limbs, but I struggled to climb up step by step. He had promised never to leave me. It couldn't be. It's just death. I'm not afraid of dying, but I fear never seeing him again. The sound of heavy pounding came from outside the door, my tears unstoppable. My trembling hands struggled to press the door lock. But just as I was about to open the door, I stopped abruptly. "No. I am a person capable of rebirth. I absolutely cannot give up." Wiping away my tears fiercely, I stumbled back to the basement. I needed to call Owen, tell him I could be reborn, get the base to send someone to rescue me. Although Kyle was gone, if other scientists knew there really was a person who could be reborn, they would surely study this direction and try to change history. So what if I had to be a lab monkey? What if the chances of success were slim? As long as there was even a slight hope, I must go back to save him. Finally getting hold of the satellite phone, I looked up at the camera monitor in the study, and was instantly stunned. In the surveillance video, 6 or 7 ferocious zombies were smashing around a bookshelf, and there was Ryan, standing behind them with bloodshot eyes. Completely ignored, I covered my mouth to stifle my sobs, but I couldn't hold back tears of joy. Persisting really did mean there was no insurmountable path. Then I saw him pick up a steel spike from the ground, forcefully plunging it into a zombie's head. One by one, the zombies fell, none resisting. Soon after, the basement door reopened. Ryan slowly came down, removing his ruined clothes to reveal many ragged and fierce wounds. His eyes still held a trace of bloodshot, but they were clear and bright. He smiled at me, showing his big white teeth, unbearably handsome. I rushed to him and held tightly to his still warm body. "I will never let go again." "Did I just hear someone say they like me?" Ryan said, holding me tight. I nodded desperately, but I was too choked up to speak. What a coincidence. I was just about to say, "I like you too." His gentle voice entered my ears, and my tears gushed out like a breached dam. Soon after, Owen received a call from Ryan and was ecstatic. 3 days later, the government sent a helicopter rescue team. The vaccine production technology was quite mature. The only thing missing was safe antibodies from immune individuals. There were immune individuals, but all were infectious. Only Ryan was not only immune with the necessary antibodies but also safe. With Ryan's blood as a culture medium, a zombie antibody vaccine was soon mass-produced, armed with the antibodies. Soldiers could freely move among and pursue zombies without fear of attack. Humanity finally launched a major counterattack, with Ryan hailed as a hero who saved humanity. 3 years later, the world announced the elimination of the last zombie. That day, Ryan and I went to Kyle's grave to lay flowers. Brother, thank you. You are the real hero who saved the world. End of main text. Extra. That day, I drank too much and felt terrible, ignoring the host's displeasure. I left the private room early. A fresh-faced girl suddenly appeared, shaking her head and asking me, "Hey, handsome, do you have a girlfriend?" Her clean, straight black hair draped over her shoulders, her eyes red and swollen, clearly having cried for a long time, perhaps to drown her sorrows. "Please get out of my way." After a brief glance, I sidestepped her. She looked a bit hurt, bowed her head slightly, and staggered back without another word. For some reason, after walking a bit, I couldn't help but look back. I saw a man jokingly trying to chat her up. She tried to leave after rejecting him, but the man laughed and reached out to pull her, only to receive a slap from her. Seeing the man about to lose his temper, I suddenly felt very annoyed, stepped forward quickly, and pushed the man away. "I don't have a girlfriend. Would you come with me?" I said to her. Her eyes, red and blurry with tears, looked at me with surprise. Then she nodded frantically. It felt like I had picked up a pitiful little kitten. At that moment, I felt something tugging at my heartstrings, so, amid the man's cursing, I wrapped my arm around her shoulders and left the noisy bar. Initially, I just wanted to prevent her from getting into trouble or being taken advantage of by men, planning to be the good guy and take her home. But I think I overestimated myself, busy with work, and having not touched a woman since breaking up with my ex-girlfriend 4 years ago. Sitting in the car watching her curl up beside me, I suddenly felt an uncontrollable urge. Perhaps it was the indulgence of alcohol, or maybe I had been single for too long. I couldn't stop myself. If she hadn't suddenly pushed me away, I really would have plunged in and not wanted to wake up. Later, the zombie crisis really did erupt, and I was glad I believed her words, allowing us to escape in time to the Joshi villa. I thought Kyle's connections would bring help soon, but he suddenly lost contact. That month was agonizing. I worried about Kyle and didn't know where hope lay for me and her. She never mentioned that night again. Sometimes I think, maybe I was just a momentary cure for her heartbreak. If it weren't for this zombie crisis, we might have each gone our separate ways, yet, it might also mark the beginning of our shared destiny. There's this inexplicable feeling, as if she has cried in my arms many times, and at times reacted with the startled ferocity of a wild kitten. Each time, I find myself moved by compassion and stirred by emotion for her. She lacks a sense of security and is timid, yet she is strong, she is emotional and has her own principles. Everything about her is so clear. I've realized I like such simple, straightforward girls. I can't help but want to protect her. However, in these apocalyptic times, I dare not promise to keep her safe, as I'm unsure of her feelings and hesitate to overstep. If we can escape safely, I would definitely tell her that I like her, even if it's the end of the world. I hope to be by her side till the end. Although I know she can be reborn, I don't want to see her suffer again, nor do I want these days together to be erased from my memory. Fortunately, she didn't take the medication, or I would have been driven to despair. After being bitten, it felt as if my body was thrown into boiling oil, torn apart in agony, driving me to the brink. I finally understand the pain she has endured time and again. I'm sorry. I can only protect her one last time, hoping she never has to endure such unbearable pain again. Glancing at my phone, it's 2:50 a.m., so I asked Owen, who after some thought, nodded solemnly. Perhaps in 10 or 20 years, other scientists might discover a method to change history, allowing us to bring Kyle back to life or even prevent the zombie apocalypse from occurring. As long as we persist, miracles can happen, right? Through Owen, I learned about finding the time coordinates that can reverse time and resurrect people, akin to finding a needle in a haystack within the capacity of a supercomputer to create a highly complex antivirus program. Theoretically, any ordinary person can be reborn at these time coordinates, provided their body's magnetic field matches the loophole. Besides spatial coordinates, we cannot choose the time coordinates or the carrier, the person who can be reborn. Thus, if someone is reborn, it's not because they are special, they just happen to be the right carrier for those specific time coordinates. Then, I roughly figured out why Scarlet was reborn. The first time Scarlet bit me, my immune constitution allowed me to survive being bitten and thus live among the zombies after developing immunity. I would then call Kyle immediately to explain the situation and tell him the specifics and location. Knowing I'm immune, he would definitely find someone to rescue me quickly and rush back to the country, catching the first flight home. However, I might have had an accident later, not surviving until the rescue, while the zombie vaccine remained undeveloped. Eventually, Kyle found the time loophole coordinates set for that night at 11:50 7:53 p.m., with the spatial coordinates set to the hotel where I was. He intended for me to be the one reborn. It was a gamble, a matter of human fate, dependent on whether my body's magnetic field could match that moment. Clearly, I wasn't suitable, but fortunately, Scarlett, who was in my arms, had a body magnetic field suitable for rebirth at that moment, so she became the one who was reborn. That night, Scarlett finding me was fate arranged by the heavens. She was an angel sent by God. Now, looking at the woman sleeping sweetly beside me, the unfinished business of that night, we have a lifetime ahead to slowly settle.